In a kingdom where healers shaped history, they're ranked from first class down to third. But outside the system, there's one healer bound by no rules. With powers beyond belief, always surrounded by powerful women, and always ready to heal if the price is right. The story kicks off with a girl named Lily gently rousing our protagonist Xenos, while she makes tea for them. In this world, a first-rate healer is celebrated as someone who can mend not just bodies, but the entire world. And the Kingdom of Hodges works hand in hand with healers to shape history. Their contributions have spurred the nation's growth and earned them high prestige. There is even a Royal Medical Institute where aspiring healers learn advanced healing magic, get licensed, and begin their careers. Yet somewhere in Hodges, an unorthodox healer without formal training makes his mark a true badass named Xenos. Shortly after, we see Xenos wrap up healing a patient, who pays him and thanks him. Xenos simply says he'll heal anyone who can pay, and after the patient leaves, Lily asks if he's heading out on a house call today. He confirms and promises to be back by dark, while Lily mentions dinner will be waiting. Later, Lily prepares dinner when Carmilla stops by. Lily explains that the food isn't ready yet because she is working on a hearty stew. Carmilla, eager to eat, is told to leave it all to Lily, as she is destined to be Xenos' future bride. With that, Carmilla retreats to her room. Not long after, Zofia arrives at the clinic looking for Xenos. Lily tells her he's on a house call and decides to wait herself. She admits she came early hoping to have Xenos all to herself. Soon enough, Linga shows up too, keen on catching his attention. Lily gives her the same explanation, leaving Linga disappointed she had planned to get close to Xenos in her own way. Zofia urges Linga to step back, but she refuses to budge. Their bickering is finally cut short when Lily reminds them it is her duty to wait for Xenos. Then Lo enters and announces she's here to have fun with Xenos. Lily informs her that he is not around at the moment and tells her to fix the door she broke before coming in. When Lo finally steps inside, she is surprised to see everyone gathered there. She wonders if Lily's cooking has lured them all, and they tease her by saying she's the only one who would come here for a reason like that. Soon enough, we see that Lily is nearly finished with the cooking and adds a secret herb as the final touch. She tells everyone that dinner will start when Xenos returns and invites them to join at the table. Lily is excited to share the meal, but before that she goes out to collect the clothes drying outside. At the same time, the girls can't wait for dark because the food smells incredible. Lo and Linga slip into the kitchen to sample the stew they simply can't resist once they realize how delicious it is. They try to explain that they were just having a quick taste, yet they can't seem to stop, even though Zofia warns they'll get scolded by Lily. In the end, even Zofia gives in and takes a bite. As Lily gathers the clothes both outside and near the kitchen, it becomes obvious that the girls have finished the entire stew. Realizing they might be in trouble, they start blaming one another for emptying the pot. They decide to act as if nothing happened, but that plan fails, so they agree to make another meal. Zofia suggests that they start by adding fresh ingredients to the pot. Just as Lily appears and asks what they're doing, the scene shifts to the dinner table where the girls try to feign ignorance, but Lily insists they tell the truth. They admit that the stew smelled so good they couldn't help themselves despite trying to hold back. Their hands acted on their own. Soon they notice how upset Lily is. The girls start arguing and blaming one another, and Lily orders them to stop or else Xenos will be angry when he returns. She explains that she only wanted to have a proper meal with Xenos and everyone else, and the girls quickly apologize, promising to help her cook. Lily then reveals that she only prepared enough ingredients for today. Just then, Carmilla bursts in, furious that they've eaten all of her stew. Linga immediately apologizes, and the others join in. Carmilla demands to know how they're going to make it up to her. She even jokes about eating their souls instead. Lily intervenes and instructs them to bring her the missing ingredients, and they agree to do so, leaving at once. Later, Lily realizes she's used up the last bit of her secret ingredient, and Carmilla asks if she isn't upset. Lily replies that she isn't very angry, which makes Carmilla admire her tolerance. Lily adds that she would have cursed them if they'd not only eaten her food, but also drank her wine, and she wonders if she can still prepare dinner before Xenos comes back. At the same time, we see Xenos in town. As he walks by, he notices a demi-human clutching her stomach in pain. Soon, her master appears, revealing that she is his slave and demands to know where she went. She explains that she suffered a stomachache and went to a clinic for treatment, but they refused to help her because she had no money. Her master, annoyed that she tried to rest over a minor stomachache, drags her back to work. Xenos observes as her master throws her onto a grave, muttering that dirty demi-humans like her belong in a graveyard. His rough treatment seems to summon a ghost. Oblivious to any supernatural sign, he orders her to get up by kicking her in the gut. But she can't rise because of the pain. Still ignoring her cries, he tells her to get to work digging graves. He warns that she will only get food if she manages to find any valuables. Suddenly, the slave attacks him, and blood begins to flow. Startled, he asks what she's doing. It quickly becomes clear that she is possessed, and he tries to run away. On his escape, he runs into Xenos again and begs for help, explaining that his slave has become violent. Xenos tells him to step aside, while the man points at his slave and demands to know what happened. Xenos then asked the nobleman about the last thing he requested from her. The damn tyrant replies that he simply told her to work as usual. When Xenos questions what kind of work that is, he hides the details by saying it was just some farm work. Changing the subject, he complains of his own injuries and begs Xenos to stop the slave, promising to pay him. The slave then attacks the noble, but Xenos intervenes and saves him. Xenos asks the slave why she is so angry. As she hurls stones at him, he easily dodges them. Impressed by his quick moves, the man orders Xenos to kill the slave. Xenos refuses, explaining that his duty is not to take lives. The noble, revealing that he is a noble himself, laments that if this continues he will die. He even says he would simply buy another slave if she dies. Yet Xenos remains firm, declaring that he will save every life he can because he is a healer. The deranged slave lunges at Xenos with a boulder, but he shatters it with his bare hands using some kind of enhancement. The noble watches in disbelief, wondering what type of healer he is, when suddenly the slave attacks him with lightning-fast movements enough to make Xenos doubt she's an ordinary demi-human. She then swipes at him with her claws, but he repels her with a barrier, noticing that his defense has seriously injured her. Still, the slave struggles on, fueled by nothing but hate, and Xenos realizes she's been possessed. He moves in close as she bites him. Surprised by the thought that ghosts can both consume and casually converse, he quickly deduces that some spirits can also possess others. With his magic, Xenos heals her wounds and expels the ghost from her body. Puzzled over what kind of farm work could lead to such possession, he then performs a full exorcism and declares his work done for the day. The noble, startled by how easily Xenos mended the slave's crushed foot, pleads for him to heal his own injuries. Xenos promises to treat him tomorrow, warning that if he waits any longer, he might not survive. The noble insists on immediate healing, but Xenos warns that the cost will be steep and asks if he's willing to pay. The noble hands over all the money he has, claiming it should suffice, but Xenos explains that it isn't enough. The noble grumbles that the fee is already above market rate, hinting that he'd suffer if charged illegally, but he adds that it won't matter since he knows Xenos works without a license. Surprised by the existence of unlicensed healers, Xenos comments that it's a shady business, not unlike grave robbing. The noble tries to act oblivious, but Xenos sees through him and declares that he'll deduct the cost of the slave from the fee. The noble agrees without objection, and Xenos proceeds to heal him, taking the slave's documents as part of the payment. After the noble departs, we later see the slave awakening. She's startled to see him and still suffers from stomach pain. When she asks who he is, he introduces himself as Xenos, explaining that he's effectively bought her. He then asks her name, and she tells him it's Tyru. Xenos orders her to remove her clothes, explaining that he spent a significant amount on her and needs to assess her condition. She's reluctant at first, but she still follows through, and he observes that her bile duct is blocked with gallstones and inflamed. Xenos then heals her in mere seconds, leaving Tyru astonished as she asks exactly what he did. He explains that he simply made a small incision in her stomach, removed all the gallstones, and then sutured it back up cleanly. She's taken aback that he didn't resort to any lengthy chanting or use intricate magic circles, and that his work left no trace at all. Xenos brushes it off, saying it's nothing extraordinary and that any skilled healer could manage this, but she insists that such a feat is far beyond what most could handle. Tyru expresses her heartfelt thanks for saving her and wonders how she might ever repay him. In response, Xenos reveals that he actually has a job for her. He shows her a detailed drawing of a rare herb and asks if she can track it down. Determined, she agrees and accompanies him. Before long, she finds the herb. It turns out to be the very same secret ingredient that Lily used in her cooking earlier. Xenos offers his sincere thanks, although Tyru feels it was a modest task and she had secretly hoped for a more significant challenge. But Xenos explains that his policy is to take payment commensurate with the work done. Despite her feeling that she barely did anything, he is content with her contribution, remarking that without her, he wouldn't have been able to manage. In a final gesture, he rips up her contract papers, declaring her free to choose her own path and do as she wishes. Uncertain about her future direction, Tyru promises that she'll return once she figures out what she truly wants to do. Xenos says his farewells, urging her to come see him if she ever gets hurt. Later that night, Xenos makes his way home, where Lily informs him that dinner is still not ready. Not long after, the three girls return after gathering ingredients, and Xenos can't help but wonder what they've been up to. They try to conceal the fact that they've already devoured his dinner, prompting Lily to decide to start cooking another meal. Xenos then retreats to another room. As he goes by, Carmilla catches a distinct scent of another woman on him, a clue that something interesting might have occurred. He tells her to be quiet, and Lily, busy preparing dinner, asks him to wait a little longer. But Xenos interrupts, requesting a cup of black tea instead. Realizing his need, Lily promptly agrees, announcing that she'll prepare a fresh cup right away. Back in the day, Xenos was part of a top-tier adventurer party. But one day, the party leader Astan hurled a gold coin at him as a reminder of his poverty, kicking him out of the group. Aston called Xenos a worthless waste of space, insisting the party would be better off without him. Even though Xenos knew he was the glue holding them together, Aston wouldn't accept any counterargument. In reality, he had recruited Xenos just to use him as a human shield, figuring no one would care if the healer got killed in battle. Now that the party had grown stronger, Xenos tried to explain that their strength came from his healing abilities. Aston retorted that Xenos' self-taught, shady healing skills were worthless, and that any other healer could do a better job. Elsewhere in a dark alley, two slave traders were trying to restrain an elf girl so they could tie her up and sell her later. One of the women cautioned her partner to be careful with her since elves were rare. Keeping her in good condition would fetch a higher price. The man had already pinned her to the ground when the elf Lily refused to surrender without a fight, so she kicks him right where future generations get cancelled. Then she bolted. Her escape, however, was cut short when the man equipped with a bow shot her in the ankle. Lily collapsed, unable to run further, and the traitor quickly caught up to her. He attempted to subdue her once more, but Lily fought back, fiercely biting his hand as if determined to erase his presence. In a desperate move to free himself, the man ended up stabbing her. By chance, Xenos happened to be walking through that same alley and discovered Lily on the ground, bleeding. He demanded to know if these traitors were responsible. They snapped at him, telling him to buzz off since slavery was perfectly legal in this land, and, in their eyes, Lily was their property to do as they pleased. Legally, Xenos had little ground to stand on. Still, an idea sparked in his mind. He offered to buy Lily by handing them the gold coin he'd received from Aston. Most of the time they'd refuse after all. An elf slave was worth far more than a single coin. But seeing her condition and the fact that she was already bleeding out, they took the coin and left. After they're gone, Xenos walks over to Lily to check if she's still alive. Lily, resigned to her fate, tells him to just leave her be, but Xenos insists she isn't going to die. Looking down at her wound, Lily is surprised to see that Xenos has already healed her completely. She thanks him for his help and apologizes for the gold coin he spent to buy her, though Xenos admits he didn't really want to keep it, as it only reminds him of Aston. He asks if she has a home, but given her status as a slave, it's safe to assume she's broke and homeless. Noticing that she's also very hungry, Xenos offers to get her some food and clothes before anything else. Xenos ends up taking her to a nearby diner and even buys her a fresh set of clothes along the way. While Lily happily enjoys the meal, she's puzzled that he didn't order food for himself. Xenos explains that he isn't hungry, even though the truth is that he's really broke. He spent the last of his money on food and clothes for Lily, and after getting kicked out of Golden Phoenix, he's likely going to need a new job soon to avoid starvation. Just then, a man stumbles into the diner, visibly injured in his arm. It's clear he's been through some trouble by the wound's appearance, with a gaping hole and some mild burn marks. Xenos deduces that the man must have been shot by a magic gun. Although the man is a lizard person and his wound might normally heal on its own in a few days, the injury is deep enough that it needs immediate attention. Xenos stretches out his hand and casts a healing spell. Within seconds, the hole in the man's arm seals up perfectly. Startled by the sudden recovery, the man asks who Xenos is. Before Xenos can answer, Lily pipes up declaring that he's a badass healer. Though the man has never heard of Xenos before, he's grateful for the help and hands him a few coins, promising to spread the word. At first, Xenos is a bit confused about the payment, but then he remembers that healers usually get paid for their services. That sparks an idea. He decides to open a clinic and become a professional healer. However, since he hails from the slums, obtaining an official healing license would be difficult. That's why Xenos opts to become an underground healer. Lily doesn't fully catch what Xenos is rambling about, but if he's planning to open a clinic, she's all in to help him out. Xenos pauses to consider the idea. Knowing that starting a clinic without a license is against the law, he's not sure it's right to rope an innocent kid into such shady business. Still, Lily reminds him that he bought her just minutes ago, which in her eyes makes him her master. Therefore, she's bound to stick by him no matter how many rules he breaks. Though Xenos never intended to become her master, he only wanted to assist her. Lily points out that she has nowhere else to go. If he leaves her behind, it'll be his fault if she ends up back as a slave. After some thought, Xenos relents and agrees to let Lily join him. Overjoyed, she swears to serve him with every fiber of her being, though he quickly tells her not to make things awkward. Realizing that setting up a clinic also means he needs to sort out his own homelessness, Xenos takes Lily to an abandoned part of the city in search of a place to stay. Curious, Lily asks why he wants to live there. Xenos explains that he needs to keep a low profile, so the Royal Association won't catch wind of his illegal clinic, plus the perfect price for his wallet that's been socially distancing from money. Although Lily can't argue with that logic, she's still uneasy. Knows that creepy monsters tend to haunt places like these. Eventually, they find a house that's still in decent shape, and Xenos thinks he's hit the stars finally lined up. However, the moment Lily lays eyes on it, she is terrified because this looks like a haunted house starter pack. She worries that if they get unlucky, they might even run into a wraith. Zeno's clueless about what a wraith is, listens as Lily explains that wraiths are terrifying undead beings capable of turning people into ghosts with just a touch. They step inside, but the darkness forces Lily to use her basic magic to light up the room. Zenos is surprised that she can cast spells at all, though he quickly notes that her tricks aren't very advanced. Once the room is illuminated, they see everything clearly. It's just as rundown as Lily feared, but Zenos stays optimistic. The roof is solid and the support pillars are sturdy overall. It's perfect for setting up his underground clinic. Nonetheless, they encounter one major problem. There's actually a wraith in the house, and it threatens to drain Zenos of his life force. Lily panics, while Zenos is more disappointed that the house came pre-haunted by something with no chill. Suddenly, Carmilla charges at him, but he effortlessly repels her with a healing spell that ends up destroying both of her arms. He isn't at all intimidated by Carmilla back in his Golden Phoenix days. Aston would send him into the labyrinth alone whenever he was in a foul mood, and Zenos had run into countless wraiths there, defeating at least 100 of them. It turns out that healing magic works pretty effectively against undead monsters. Returning to the matter at hand, Zenos apologizes to Carmilla for barging into what appears to be her domain, but explains that there are no other options nearby. He asks if she's alright with him moving in. Carmilla feels insulted that Zenos would even suggest sharing her space, the so-called Queen of Wraiths, and she summons a host of ghost servants to drive him out. Without flinching, Zenos casually uses a high-level healing spell to wipe them all out. Stunned by Zenos' power and beginning to worry he might exorcise her, Carmilla eventually concedes. Not wanting to fight, Zenos asks if she's willing to let him and Lily have at least one bedroom, along with a space to treat future patients. Realizing she can't beat him, Carmilla agrees to let them have the first floor while she keeps the second floor for herself. Zenos thinks that arrangement works out pretty well, though Lily isn't sure whether to be more scared of Zenos or Carmilla. By the next morning, with no patients around, Lily grows bored and asks Zenos if she should either go outside to do some advertising or maybe even kick someone's ass. Zenos, however, advises against it, worried the Royal Hospital might eventually catch wind of their operation. Besides, he's confident it won't be long before they get their first customer. Sure enough, a few seconds later, someone walks in. Lily eagerly rises to greet their first customer and is surprised to see that it's the same guy Zenos healed the day before. Zenos had been expecting him sooner or later after all. Law-abiding citizens don't usually get hit by magic bullets, and people like him would rather avoid the traditional hospital scene for obvious reasons. The man introduces himself as Zond and says he needs Zenos to check on his sister. Zenos agrees to help, and Zofia shows him a minor flesh wound on her arm. She explains that her arm has been acting weird since yesterday, and after one look, Zenos deduces that she was hit by a magic attack laced with poison. Zofia asks if there's anything he can do, but since she endured the wound all night, most of the tissue in her arm is dead. Zenos tells her it's best to amputate the entire arm to prevent the poison from spreading. Although disappointed at the thought of losing an arm, Zofia asks how much it will cost to have it removed. Zenos says she'll need to pay 1,000,000 yen, which immediately infuriates Zond. He finds it outrageous for such a simple procedure. Just as he's ready to start a fight over the price, Zofia intervenes and tries to negotiate with Zenos. She questions whether he really wants to charge so much when she's known as Zofia the Tornado, the leader of one of the 3 gangs in the area, a fact Zenos is well aware of. Yet, he refuses to do the work for free, especially since regeneration takes a lot of effort. Zofia is baffled, having never heard of a healer who could regenerate limbs, and Zenos is equally puzzled, as his self-taught method is something he hasn't seen in other healers. Not knowing what the standard is, he simply asks if she wants to proceed with the procedure. Zofia agrees without hesitation. Zenos then lays her on a table and prepares to amputate her arm. He conjures a magic scalpel, a blade of condensed magic that appears at will. It's super sharp and completely sterile, making it ideal for surgery, though most healers can't perform such feats. He begins the operation by continuously channeling healing magic to numb the area. He then swiftly amputates the infected arm and ramps up his healing power to regenerate a new one. Layer by layer, he rebuilds Zofia's arm until it's as good as new and stops acting weird. Amazed and grateful that Zenos successfully regenerated her arm, Zofia no longer objects to the price. She even promises to send her injured subordinates to him for treatment. Far as Zenos is concerned, if they're throwing coin, they can be as weird as they want. In the days that followed, Zenos was busy treating numerous patients from the Lizardman faction, so Lily brewed some tea to help him relax. Grateful for her thoughtfulness, Zenos couldn't help but wonder why she prepared 3 cups instead of 2. Lily explained that one was for Carmilla, though Zenos wasn't entirely sure if Carmilla would join them until he learned that she actually loves tea. While taking a break, Lily asked Zenos if he'd any idea why the Lizardmen kept getting injured so badly. Based on what he'd seen, he suspected that a turf war was raging between various factions. Then out of nowhere, one faction literally broke through the door. a pack of werewolves stormed into the clinic, and their leader Linga declared that she was determined to kill Xenos. She'd been fighting the lizardmen for days, and no matter how many she injured, they'd always recovered, so she set her sights on eliminating their healer. For one, Xenos wasn't even affiliated with the lizardmen, and he preferred avoiding violence. Yet Linga had already ordered her crew to kill him. Despite their ferocity, his defensive magic kept him immovable, unable to be harmed. Realizing brute force wasn't working, Linga resorted to demolishing the clinic. That plan quickly backfired, as the building was also Carmilla's residence, something she wouldn't tolerate being destroyed. The moment Linga and her pack saw the Queen of the Wraiths, Carmilla, fear gripped them, knowing a Wraith was among them, an enemy they could never defeat. Carmilla, infuriated by their intrusion, was ready to drain them of their life force, but Xenos intervened, urging her to calm down. He explained that he didn't want anyone to die in his clinic, noting that none of the attackers had even reached the second floor. As long as Linga and her men agreed to fix the damage, he promised to let it go. Seeing that the Queen of the Wraiths had listened to him, Linga immediately began pleading for forgiveness. Then the next morning, an orc popped into the clinic like he owned the place, saying Loa, the big boss of the orcs, wanted a word with Xenos. At the same moment, Xenos saw this coming eventually, especially since he'd already handled 2 other slum bosses. Loa was the boss of the orcs and ogres, and she'd raked in a ton of cash mining mana stones with brute force, making her a pretty big shot around these parts. At least after he dealt with her, nobody else would dare cause trouble around his shop anymore, so he figured he might as well just handle it now. But before heading out, Xenos asked the orc if Lo was the reasonable type. The orc assured him Lo was easily the wisest, most respectable person he'd ever encounter. Hearing that put Xenos at ease, though it left him curious why Lo hadn't come along herself. The orc explained that right now, she couldn't exactly move. That sounded pretty serious, prompting Xenos to immediately hurry out to meet his newest patient. The orc guided him into a cave and introduced him to Lo. She was glad to finally see him in person, but before doing anything else, Xenos asked how she'd even found out about him. Lo explained the lizardmen and werewolves had been running their mouths non-stop about some super secret healer they definitely weren't supposed to talk about. That pretty much ruined the whole underground part of being an underground healer, but Xenos would just have to sort that out later. From what Lo heard, Xenos could patch up anyone for a decent price, no matter how bad the injury, and she wanted to see if he really lived up to the hype. As Xenos approached her and raised his hand, Lo wondered aloud what exactly he was up to. Xenos calmly explained that since he couldn't see any injuries externally, he was scanning her to detect internal damage. Loa was impressed, noting most healers couldn't do something like that. Xenos, however, considered this basic common sense. It wasn't exactly helpful treating someone without knowing what's happening inside their body. Once Xenos finished scanning her, he noticed a lump inside Loa's stomach, and since he felt mana radiating from it, he figured it was a mana stone. Lo confirmed he was right, and said this stone specifically was enchanted with explosive magic, meaning that if she moved even slightly, she'd probably explode. Xenos asked if someone had tried assassinating her by sneaking the stone into her food, but Lo insisted nothing that dramatic had happened. She'd simply been starving, mistaken the mana stone for a rice ball, and swallowed it whole. But Xenos didn't see any reason to panic, casually noting that sooner or later, a mana stone would always find its own way out. Xenos gets set to leave, but Loa stops him, saying it ain't that simple. Turns out, when she swallowed that mana stone, she kinda chewed it up a bit, meaning there isn't much time before it goes boom. She's pretty much accepted that her mistake's gonna cost her life. Her only worry is her guys refuse to leave her side. Xenos wonders aloud what exactly Lo expects him to do, so she explains she just wanted him here to hand over her fortune. Once she blows, that's curtains for the entire orc empire she built, so she'd rather give all that cash to someone who'll use it right instead of letting it end up in sketchy hands. While digging around on Xenos, Loa discovered that even though he charges top dollar for healing, he has a rule about fixing up kids free of charge. She tosses him a key, saying he can use it to get into her treasure vault after she's gone. But Xenos never agreed to just let her go out like that. Considering she hasn't exploded yet, she must have swallowed the stone pretty recently. Without hesitation, he summons his scalpel and strides right over. Without a word, Xenos starts slicing into Loa's abdomen, causing her crew to panic at first, until he suddenly holds up the explosive mana stone. In just a few seconds flat, he managed to open her up, pull out the stone, and patch her back together, completely defusing the risk. But the mana stone is still ready to explode any second. So for everyone's safety, Xenos squeezes it tightly in his hands until it detonates. The blast is strong enough to level an entire city, but Xenos protects himself by casting defensive magic around his hands. He's totally fine, although honestly, it hurt like hell. He tosses the key back to Lower, telling her she doesn't need to worry about donating her wealth anymore. Lo is still trying to wrap her head around the fact Xenos really chose to save her life instead of grabbing the money. But he shrugs, telling her he only expects fair compensation for healing. An entire fortune would have been overkill. Loa decides right then that she really likes Xenos, promising him that if he ever needs backup, just say the word and she'll throw everything she's got behind him. She even offers to have her crew guard his clinic. But Xenos figures it's smarter to keep his distance. Having Lo's men hanging around is a guaranteed recipe for trouble. A few days pass, and Lily's moping around at the front desk, because lately, Zofia, Linga, and Lo have been hanging around the clinic way more than usual. Come to think of it, Xenos realizes they've been popping up constantly, even though none of them ever seems hurt. He figures they're probably just bored, but Carmilla straight up tells him it's obvious those women have a thing for him. Xenos can't wrap his head around why they'd fall for a regular underground healer like him, but Carmilla insists she knows exactly what she's talking about. Lily worries one of them might start dating Xenos and hogging all his attention, but Xenos quickly assures her he'd never date any of those weirdos anyway. Still, Carmilla thinks it's only a matter of time before those three go full-blown battle royale to see who gets Xenos all to herself. Xenos doubts things could ever escalate that far. But literally the following day, Zofia walks in with a fruit basket, casually mentioning she's about to declare war against the other factions for some vague reason. Right after her, Linga and Lowe's do the exact same thing. No matter how loudly Xenos protests, none of them listen. Carmilla finds this hilarious, jokingly blaming Xenos' irresistible charm for all the bloodshed that's about to happen. But Xenos really isn't cool with how she's phrasing it. The big showdown is scheduled for noon today, and Xenos can't let them murder each other because of him. He's gotta step in and do something fast. Over at the stadium, the three girls and their crews are already geared up and ready to start a full-on massacre. Just before the bloodshed kicks off, Xenos suddenly strolls in. Everyone turns to hear what he's got to say, but Xenos surprises them all by announcing he's not here to stop the fight. Since they clearly have old grudges against each other, he tells them to fight it out until everyone's satisfied. With Xenos' green light, the girls all agree to go all out. Whoever's left standing at the end gets to claim Xenos' stick as the grand prize. Xenos definitely doesn't recall agreeing to that last bit, but before he can object, the chaos is already underway. Zofia lunges first, aiming her daggers at Linga's neck, but Linga dodges swiftly, flipping out of the way just in time. Right then, Lo leaps in to deliver a flying kick to Zofia, but Zofia sidesteps, and a bunch of random bystanders get flattened instead. Zofia and Linga clash again, but before they can land solid blows, Lo drops down from above, nearly flattening them both. The impact sends Zofia tumbling into the orc section of the arena, prompting her to attack the orcs immediately. And soon enough, all three sides are throwing down against each other's factions. It's total carnage out there, with people getting sliced up left and right. But somehow, even after battling non-stop for 6 hours, no one's actually died yet. Suddenly, Zofia notices the injuries on her arms are magically closing up, and Xenos casually mentions he's been behind it the whole time. He agreed to let them have their dramatic death match, but he definitely wasn't about to let anyone actually die, especially since they're still technically his patients. Zofia feels pretty dumb for not noticing Xenos' trick earlier, but to be fair, none of them ever imagined a healer could treat so many injuries at once, especially continuously for over 6 straight hours. They finally get it. At this rate, the fight's never gonna end, which is exactly what Xenos wanted them to realize. Unless they can learn to chill out and get along, they'll never have any peace. But hey, if they're really dead set on continuing this nonsense, he'll just keep healing them endlessly. And yeah, he's definitely billing them for every minute. Now feeling kinda embarrassed, the girls finally understand how ridiculous it was to start a whole war over basically nothing. They quickly agree to put their grudges aside and start fresh from now on. Of course, they'll still fight over Xenos, but at least this time, they've promised to keep things strictly non-lethal. At the same time, Lily asks Xenos why he bothered going through all that trouble. Xenos remembers something his teacher once told him: a healer who can only patch wounds is third-rate. Someone who can restore the entire body is second-rate. But a first-rate healer actually makes the world around him better. Xenos doubts he's got what it takes to be a first-rate healer, but he still wants to try improving the slums a bit. Plus, if he'd let everyone wipe each other out, he'd run out of patients to treat, which wouldn't exactly be great for business. Or at least that's what he claims, but Lily sees right through him. She knows he's just acting casual to hide how deeply he cares. After all, if the demi-humans stop fighting each other and start getting along, his clinic's patient numbers would drop like crazy, and yet he helped them anyway. That's exactly why Lily likes Xenos so much, and she tells him this straight to his face. But of course Xenos doesn't really get what she means. Anyway, it's getting pretty late, so Xenos decides to head out, collect his payment, and call it a day. Lily's surprised. She thought he was joking earlier about charging them for all the healing he did during the fight. But nope, Xenos is dead serious. Treating that many people for hours straight is exhausting, so obviously he's expecting to get paid. Over in the capital, the commander of the Royal Knights is having a little chat with his vice commander Krishna. Krishna asks if something's up, and the commander mentions he caught wind of a strange rumor. The war between the demi-humans has suddenly come to a halt. Krishna's shocked. They've been battling over the slums for years, so it's hard to believe they'd just randomly decide to play nice now. Honestly, the commander isn't buying it either, but if the rumor checks out, he'll need to step in. The kingdom has stayed stable with the royals and nobility on top, because the poor, unfairly treated folks are usually too busy fighting each other to threaten the status quo. If they start cooperating, though, they might band together and demand stuff like universal healthcare, and obviously nobody at the top wants that. Rumor has it one individual is responsible for bringing peace to the demi-humans, so the commander assigns Krishna to handle the situation personally. Krishna understands clearly and vows she'll track down this dangerous individual and arrest him immediately for the terrible crime of promoting peace. Over at Xenos' clinic, he sneezes cause folks been talking about him. Soon as that happens, the whole place starts tripping, thinking he's about to catch something nasty. Linga jumps in and says he can use her tail if he needs something warm and fuzzy. Then Lo, with a smirk, says she's got a spot that's even warmer if he's feeling cold around the face. Xenos doesn't even blink. He tells them it's just a sneeze and he still needs to fix up Zofia, so they better chill till he's done. Once her arm is healed, Zofia thanks him, but it's been a minute since she's needed his help, so Xenos asks what happened this time. She tells him she got hurt while pulling a job last night. Turns out, Zofia's been stealing from corrupt nobles and passing the goods along to the folks who need it. But during a break-in yesterday, she ran into the vice commander of the Royal Knights, a loose cannon named Krishna. This woman doesn't ask questions. She pulls up with magic fire guns and blasts first. Carmilla's got a bad feeling about it. If Zofia ran into Krishna, and Krishna gets wind of Xenos, things could get messy. But Xenos isn't too concerned. He figures someone that high up wouldn't waste time worrying about some underground healer in the slums. Meanwhile, Krishna is already in the slums digging for info. She notices the demi-humans aren't fighting anymore, which feels suspicious, so she corners a lizard man and demands to know who brought the factions together. The lizard man has no idea who she is, and since Xenos has been trying to stay under the radar, he plays dumb. He tries to walk off, but Krishna draws her gun and tells him she'll shoot if he doesn't talk. He stands firm and tells her to go ahead, he'd take a bullet before selling Xenos out. At that moment, Zofia and her brother happen to walk by. Krishna takes one look at him and decides this is not the time for a fight. She makes a quick getaway and ends up lost in the rundown part of the city. By sheer accident, she stumbles across Xenos' clinic and steps in to ask for directions. Xenos doesn't recognize her and says he's happy to help her find her way back. But right then, Lily walks out holding a tray of tea, and as soon as Krishna spots her elf ears, she instantly whips out her gun and shoots Xenos in the head. Lily's stunned that Krishna straight up put a bullet in Xenos' head out of nowhere. But Krishna claims she has a perfectly valid reason. Alongside her current mission, she was also sent to investigate some recent kidnappings in the area. Since Xenos is human and Lily's an elf, Krishna immediately assumed Xenos had kidnapped Lily, so she didn't hesitate to shoot first. Lily quickly points out the holes in Krishna's logic and explains that Xenos basically adopted her, and she's here because she wants to be. Krishna starts to realize she might have made the wrong call, especially now that she sees how happy Lily is. Luckily, the bullets she used were non-lethal, so Xenos should be unconscious at worst. But to her surprise, Xenos looks totally fine. Krishna apologizes for shooting him and jumping to conclusions, but she can't figure out how he survived without a scratch. Xenos casually tells her he just used some defensive magic to block the shot. But Krishna doesn't buy it. Ordinary defensive spells shouldn't be strong enough to handle her bullets. Xenos has no clue what she means, since his defensive magic seems pretty standard to him. But Krishna's seen plenty of high-level magic during her years as vice commander of the Royal Knights, and she knows Xenos' shields are at the level of a grand sorcerer. As soon as Krishna mentions she's the vice commander, Xenos and Lily instantly tense up, realizing her presence might spell trouble for them. Apparently Krishna wants to ask Xenos for some help on something important. To avoid any further trouble, Xenos agrees to hear her out, but secretly warns all of his clients not to show up while Krishna is there. Once seated, Krishna explains she's currently on a secret mission and needs his assistance. Xenos tries to decline politely, but Krishna insists it's every citizen's responsibility to cooperate with the orders of knights. Given how trigger-happy Krishna seems, Xenos is worried he might get shot again if he refuses, so he reluctantly agrees to listen. She explains her mission is to track down a certain man and arrest him immediately. She doesn't have his name or even what he looks like, but this guy is the mediator who brought an end to the war between the various factions. Xenos nearly chokes on his tea when he realizes Krishna is hunting him down, but he quickly regains his composure and calmly asks her why exactly she's after this mediator. Krishna explains that the Knight's orders can't let someone who has the influence to stop faction wars run around freely. She recently tried to violently interrogate one of the locals, but despite all her threats, he refused to say a word. In her eyes, if the slum residents are willing to protect this mediator, it must mean he's some dangerous criminal mastermind who needs to be taken down. Xenos carefully suggests that maybe this mediator is just avoiding attention, and if she simply dropped the investigation and left him alone, he probably wouldn't cause any issues. Krishna immediately asks Xenos if he knows who this mediator might be, but Xenos quickly claims he was just guessing based on common sense. Regardless, Krishna insists she can't just ignore this person because her commander gave her direct orders, and anyone with enough power to end factional conflicts is too dangerous to leave unchecked. Lily speaks up, saying Krishna probably doesn't need to worry, since the mediator is likely just focused on earning an honest living and wouldn't try to disrupt the nation. But the way Lily describes him makes it sound like she actually knows the mediator personally. Lily panics and starts insisting that she's never met him either. Krishna is clearly getting suspicious, but for the moment, she decides to let it go. It's getting late, so Xenos uses that as a chance to politely get Krishna out the door. But while he's guiding her out, she suddenly notices the bed in the corner of the room. Krishna thinks it's strange that Xenos has a bed down here, and Xenos definitely doesn't want to admit he and Lily share it because there's a wraith upstairs, so he casually tells her it's just a spare. Krishna immediately seizes on that and asks if Xenos would mind letting her use the spare bed. She's had trouble finding a good spot to set up base in the slums, so she'd appreciate it if Xenos could accommodate her until her mission is over, and of course she'll pay for it. Xenos knows there's no way he can refuse without making her more suspicious, so he reluctantly agrees, while Carmilla watches the whole situation unfold and finds it absolutely hilarious. Lily brews up a little green tea for their new guest, but Krishna struggles with hot drinks and starts carefully blowing on it to cool it down. Lily still feels jealous about this new woman showing up and trying to grab Xenos' attention away from her, so she decides to demonstrate her position clearly. She casually hops onto Xenos' lap and sweetly asks him to pat her head like he usually does. Xenos complies without a fuss, though he's a bit confused about why she suddenly asked for this. Carmilla, invisible as always, quietly whispers in his ear that Lily is obviously jealous, startling Xenos. But Carmilla just finds the whole scene way too entertaining to ignore. Determined not to lose Xenos' affection, Lily keeps clinging even closer than usual to make sure Krishna knows who's in charge here. But Krishna couldn't care less. She's still busy cautiously blowing on her hot tea. Eventually Lily drifts off to sleep, and Xenos gently tucks her into bed before returning to the living room to finish his earlier conversation with Krishna. He starts explaining the whole situation, how he rescued Lily from a group of slave traders who were apparently part of an illegal trafficking ring operating around the area. This detail explains why Krishna jumped to conclusions and shot first earlier, but unfortunately Xenos doesn't have any useful information about the traffickers themselves. On another note, Krishna has something else she'd like to ask about, given that Xenos seems to be a master mage who's perfected defensive magic. She's curious if a healer who put the same amount of effort into their craft could possibly regenerate an entire arm. Xenos is just about to comment that he thought regrowing an arm was probably something a decent healer could handle, but Krishna quickly says it's supposed to be impossible. According to her, only saints or the absolute best healers in existence would have that kind of power. Xenos wonders why Krishna brought this up, so she explains she recently fought Zofia and vividly remembers severely damaging Zofia's arm. Yet when she encountered Zofia yesterday, her arm appeared perfectly fine. Krishna's convinced this means there's a healer hiding somewhere in the slums capable of regrowing lost limbs. If that's the case, that healer probably holds significant influence among the faction leaders here. Krishna plans to restart her investigation first thing in the morning to track down this nefarious healer, though Xenos doesn't understand why she'd assume someone who heals others would automatically be nefarious. Actually, Krishna seems to have a pretty negative opinion about the entire slum, so Xenos casually asks if there's a specific reason behind it. Krishna admits she might be biased, but that's only because someone from the slums took her mother's life. Krishna's mother was kind-hearted and genuinely wanted to help as many people as possible. She frequently visited the slums, organizing events and providing meals to the people who couldn't afford food. But one day, she simply didn't return home. According to witnesses, Krishna's mother was attacked and killed by someone who wanted to steal her wedding ring. Krishna was devastated when she learned that her mother had saved countless people from starving. Yet nobody stepped up to save her when she needed help. That's why Krishna decided to join the Knights and become an unstoppable hero, determined to bring justice to the criminals in the slums. The next day, Krishna heads out early to continue her investigation, allowing Xenos to finally get back to healing his patients again. Shortly after, Zofia walks in with a minor wound on her arm, asking Xenos if he could take a look at it. Xenos begins healing her, but warns Zofia to stay cautious since they never know when Krishna might pop back in. As if on cue, Krishna shows up again, claiming she got lost and needs directions to find her way out. As soon as Krishna spots Zofia, she immediately draws her guns, prompting Zofia to whip out her knives in response. They briefly face off before Krishna asks Zofia if there really is some evil healer uniting criminals to threaten innocent people. Zofia admits there's definitely a healer in the slums, but he's nowhere near evil. She knows she isn't exactly a model citizen herself, but she can confirm there are far worse people hiding among the nobility. For instance, Zofia mentions that Krishna is investigating the trafficking ring, and after doing some digging herself, she found out the mastermind behind it is actually an aristocrat. Krishna finds that hard to swallow at first because the trafficking ring operates within the slums, but Zofia explains that's just a clever trick designed to throw off the Knights. Krishna's still skeptical. but she wants Zofia to give her the name of the person behind all the kidnappings. Zofia calmly states that it's a man named Kalendor. Krishna struggles to believe that accusation, considering Kalendor is well known as a generous philanthropist who proudly educates orphans, not someone who'd sell kids into slavery. Zofia shrugs, saying she never expected Krishna to trust her anyway, since Krishna sees everyone from the slums as criminals. But the mediator isn't like that at all. He treats everyone fairly and always offers them a second chance. Typical Krishna with her naive idea of justice. Furious that Zofia would mock her sense of right and wrong, Krishna immediately moves to pull the trigger, but Xenos steps in front of her, firmly asking Krishna to lower her gun. Krishna urges him to move out of the way, but Xenos refuses, insisting Zofia is his patient and he won't allow anyone to hurt her. He apologizes for not mentioning it sooner, but finally admits that he's the mediator Krishna's been hunting. Krishna thinks Xenos is just trying to protect Zofia by making up a lie, because there's no chance he could actually be the healing mediator. After all, he's already shown mastery over defensive magic, so he can't possibly be an expert healer, too. Xenos calmly replies that he wouldn't exactly call himself a master, but he's pretty skilled in both healing and defense, since both styles just require amplifying a body's natural processes. This explanation makes no sense to Krishna, and she still doesn't buy that Xenos could really be the healer. It's obvious to her that he's siding with Zofia, but out of respect for the hospitality he showed yesterday, Krishna decides to leave peacefully. As she walks out, Lily notices Krishna is headed straight toward the district where the aristocrats live, prompting Xenos to suddenly realize exactly where she's going. Krishna took Zofia's accusation about Kalendor seriously, so she's likely headed to his mansion to question him personally. Obviously, she can't openly accuse Kalendor of running the child trafficking ring, so instead, Krishna makes up a story to justify her visit. She informs Kalendor that there's been a recent increase in theft around his area. Kalendor agrees, mentioning he's had some trouble with the Lizardman gang lately. Krishna tells him that she plans to increase patrols nearby, but first she'd like to inspect his manor to get an idea of his current security measures. Kalendor fully understands her concern and gladly offers to show her around his entire estate. Krishna is given a detailed tour, and afterward, Kalendor asks her opinion about his security system. She praises him for his thoroughness, but something unusual caught her eye during the tour. She asks Kalendor if she could briefly use the restroom before leaving, and he agrees without suspicion, allowing Krishna to leave his office. Although it makes sense for a high-ranking aristocrat like Kalendor to have strong security, Krishna finds it strange that he's put so much effort into securing the backyard of his manor. Feeling there's something hidden back there, she carefully looks over the wall and quickly spots a concealed entrance. Krishna quietly slips down into the tunnel, and moments later, she's confronted with the horrifying realization that Zofia was telling the truth. Turns out Kalendor actually is the mastermind behind the kidnappings. But before Krishna can help the trapped children, he sneaks up behind her, grabs the guns she left upstairs, and blasts off her arm. He tells Krishna she shouldn't have stuck her nose where it didn't belong. Now he just needs to finish her off quickly and get back to his trafficking operation. But before he gets the chance, Zofia and Xenos arrive just in time. When Xenos realized Krishna had headed straight for trouble, he asked Zofia to show him the quickest route here. Kalendor won't allow any witnesses to leave alive, so he flips Krishna's gun to lethal mode and shoots Xenos directly in the face. But to his shock, Xenos is completely fine, even though the lethal shot definitely stung a bit. Panicking, Kalendor tries to run, but he drops the gun. Xenos quickly picks it up, leaving Kalendor begging for his life. Fortunately for Kalendor, Xenos has a strict rule against killing, but that doesn't mean he won't make him suffer a little. So he switches the gun to non-lethal and blasts Kalendor right in the head. With Kalendor knocked out, Xenos rushes to check on Krishna, who insists it's already too late for her. Her arm's missing and a chunk of her stomach is gone, and she's already accepted death, but Xenos calmly reassures her she'll be fine, though he's definitely charging her extra for this treatment. A few minutes later, Krishna is back in one piece, stunned that Xenos could completely heal wounds this severe in mere moments. She realizes now that he was telling the truth about being the mediator, but she no longer has any intention of arresting him. As far as she's concerned, he's the real hero here. But Xenos doesn't see himself as a hero at all. He's just a healer who kept everyone alive. If anyone deserves the title of hero, it's Krishna, since she was the first person who took real action to save these kids. Sure, she can be a little misguided sometimes, but deep down, she genuinely wants to make the world a better place. Zofia and the lizard men start freeing the children from the dungeon. But since the royal knights will arrive soon, Xenos would rather not stick around to deal with them. He quickly gathers everyone up and prepares to leave. Before he can go, Krishna rushes up and asks why he chose to save her, even though they were enemies just moments before. Xenos calmly looks at her, shrugs, and tells her he's just making sure she pays her bill. After all, she still owes him for last night's stay in his clinic, plus the extra fee for today's emergency healing, and he expects payment in full by the end of the week. Way back when Xenos was still a kid, he was just another broke orphan struggling day by day to survive in the slums, spending most of his time alone in some back alley. One afternoon, Astan was wandering through the slums, sizing up kids to see who might make a good meat shield. So far though, he's disappointed because none of them look like they'd last long enough. Then Astan notices Xenos sitting alone and figures he'll do just fine. He strolls over casually, speaking in a fake friendly tone, telling Xenos he's broke, starving and jobless, so he might as well join him for some adventures. Xenos, not catching the hidden malice behind Astan's words, actually thinks he might be a decent guy. Still, he's hesitant because folks from the slums usually don't get the chance to become adventurers. Astan brushes it off, telling Xenos that as long as he's got some kind of skill, anything's possible. He asks Xenos if there's anything he's good at. Xenos mentions that he knows a little healing magic, but Astan immediately doubts it. After all, learning healing spells usually takes years at the Royal Academy, so there's no way some random orphan figured it out by himself. But healing magic or not, Astan doesn't care. He plans to use Xenos mainly as a distraction if things get ugly. Once Xenos agrees, Astan quickly takes him out into the woods. Out there, the two face a wolf monster, and Astan gets hurt during the fight. Without thinking twice, Xenos heals him instantly. Then, when Astan charges at the wolf again, Xenos boosts his speed with another healing spell, helping Astan slice the wolf's head clean off. But Astan's oblivious, he doesn't even notice his wounds healing or his sudden boost of speed. Instead, he thinks Xenos is completely worthless. After a couple of years like this, Astan finally kicks Xenos out of the party. We know how Xenos has been doing ever since, but Astan's group hasn't had the same luck. Right after kicking Xenos out, Astan and his team headed into a cave for their next mission. This job's important because they plan to use it to win favor with the kingdom's nobles. The only problem is they all hate doing the actual work. Yuma grumbles, saying the sooner they finish, the sooner they can get back to the inn and drink their troubles away. Andreas is hyped because girls always throw themselves at them once they drop that they're members of the Golden Phoenix Party. Their reputation is unmatched when it comes to taking down monsters and finishing missions without a single scratch. Just as they're talking, the monsters they're hunting finally show up. So Astan quickly draws his sword, ready for action. He tells Guile to cast some defensive magic on him as he charges ahead. Guile follows the plan perfectly, but Astan still ends up getting his arm burned in the fight. Meanwhile, Yuma's getting completely wrecked by one of the wolves off to the side, so he's clearly not going to be much help today. Astan shouts at Andes, urging him to hurry up and cast an attack spell, but Andes takes forever just chanting the incantation. Before he even finishes, a fireball blasts him. Astan is stunned, wondering if his team was always this useless. It's obvious they're losing this fight, so he quickly calls for everyone to retreat. Once they're safely outside, Astan demands to know why his team is struggling against monsters that are barely B rank. Andes fires back, pointing out Astan didn't exactly perform well either. Guile brings up the possibility that maybe Xenos was telling the truth about healing them, but Astan dismisses it immediately. In his mind, there's no chance some low-class slum kid could ever master healing magic. Still, Astan thinks maybe hiring a healer could help, just to play it safe. A few days later, they're back at the cave again with a healer named Yuman. But right from the start, Yuman warns Astan she's not suited for battlefield healing. Usually she just heals people in the capital, but since she has an adventurer's license, she agreed to come along. Yuman's curious why the Golden Phoenix would suddenly need a healer when they're famous for never getting hurt. Astan brushes her off rudely, saying it's none of her business. Guile asks Yuman if Yuma will be okay, considering how badly he got hurt by the wolves last time. Yuman says she treated him personally, so he'll definitely live. But his injuries were so severe, he'll never go adventuring again. You'd think Astan might show a bit of sympathy for a teammate permanently out of commission, but instead he coldly says Yuma wasn't worth much anyway and moves on like nothing happened. As for why this mission even matters so much, it turns out some noble named Lord Fennel wants a scarf made from a firefox as a gift for his daughter. If delivering this scarf earns Astan favor with the Lord, then as far as he's concerned, risking his life is totally worth it. Barely 2 seconds pass before Astan's big plan completely collapses when the wolves launch a surprise attack. Astan instantly leaps into action, yelling at Guile to cast defensive magic on everyone. But when Astan charges in, he can't even land a single blow on the wolves. The wolves retaliate with 4 fireballs. Astan manages to deflect 3, but the 4th slams right into Andes' gut, dropping him instantly. Astan keeps desperately swinging at the wolves without success, until Yuman screams that they need to retreat now because Andes is critically injured. Astan can't believe his team's falling apart yet again. The moment they get outside, he furiously turns to Guile, demanding to know why he didn't protect Andes properly. But Yuman jumps in, telling Astan that Guile's defensive magic actually worked perfectly. Without that barrier, Andes would have died on impact from the fireball. Frustrated, Astan tells Yuman to hurry up and heal Andes already, but she shakes her head and says it's impossible. Only elite healers or saints could manage injuries this severe without special preparations. Unless they get Andes to a hospital immediately, he won't make it. Later, Astan meets with Lord Fennel's servant, who bluntly informs him that Lord Fennel is deeply disappointed. Astan begs for another chance, convinced he can secure the fox fur if he just tries one more time. But the servant coldly reminds him it's already too late. Lord Fennel's daughter's birthday has come and gone, making the gift pointless now. The servant explains the reason Lord Fennel is angry isn't just because Astan's party failed. It's because Astan repeatedly assured him they'd deliver, even when he clearly couldn't. If Astan had just admitted from the start that the mission was impossible, Lord Fennel would have accepted that and found another gift for his daughter. But Astan kept promising he could get it done. For a moment, Astan tries shifting all the blame onto Xenos. But then it hits him he never officially registered Xenos as part of the Golden Phoenix party. So legally, Xenos was never even there, and Astan can't pin the blame on him. With no excuses left, Astan bows his head in humiliation and apologizes for all the trouble he caused. It burns him up inside to be bowing to a servant like this, but he swears he'll make up for it somehow. Lord Fennel's servant just scoffs, wondering out loud how Astan plans to do that when half of his team is practically dead already. Astan confidently promises that he'll find new members to rebuild the team, and next time Lord Fennel needs something done, Golden Phoenix will deliver. Lord Fennel's servant finally leaves, but Guile isn't sure about Astan's bold promises. They've got zero prospects for recruiting new, skilled adventurers, and there's no way the two of them alone could handle serious quests. Astan brushes off his concern, claiming he's got everything under control. Sure, he still doesn't think Xenos is worth much, but even he can't deny things went smoother with him around. So Astan decides they'll just bring Xenos back into the party. He's convinced Xenos must be desperate to rejoin Golden Phoenix, despite how badly he treated him. The next day, Astan and Guile hit the slums looking for Xenos. But they have no clue where to start searching, so Astan gets a bright idea. He'll just hire the 3 faction leaders from the slums to track down Xenos for him. He figures they'll do anything for money. A little later, Astan pays a lizardman to guide him to Zofia, one of the faction leaders. Astan tells her straight up that he has a job offer. Zofia's not really interested since it's cutting into her clinic hours, but she'll listen since he's a paying customer. Astan introduces himself as the leader of Golden Phoenix and says he's looking for a guy named Xenos, who should have shown up in the slums about 2 months ago. Zofia can't believe what she's hearing. Xenos already told her all about how Astan kicked him out of Golden Phoenix. She thought that was dumb enough, but she never imagined Astan would actually be stupid enough to come crawling back looking for him. She bluntly tells Astan to get lost. Xenos has way better things to do than deal with someone like him. Honestly, just looking at Astan makes her sick. Astan feels humiliated and considers attacking her for a second, but quickly realizes he'd get crushed, so he wisely backs off. Since Zofia won't help, Astan tries his luck with Linga's faction instead. But the moment Linga figures out who Astan is, she immediately tells him to leave. Astan's stunned to learn that Linga is also friends with Xenos, and just in case Astan's thinking about starting trouble, Linga reminds him coldly that she could step on him like a cockroach before he even blinks. Next, Astan decides to try his luck with Loa, but just like the others, she bluntly tells him to go screw himself. And if she catches wind that he's been bothering Xenos again, she personally promises to squish his skull right between her melons. Astan and Guile rush out of Loa's cave immediately. Astan can't wrap his head around why all the faction leaders care so much about Xenos. He tries convincing himself that they must be talking about some other guy named Xenos, because there's no way the Xenos he knows could ever be this influential. Right at that moment, Guile spots Xenos casually walking down the street with Lily. They'd just finished shopping and were about to head home when Astan suddenly calls out to Xenos. Xenos freezes for a second, stunned to see Astan and Guile again, but he isn't thrilled about it. He decides to just ignore them and walk away. Astan quickly stops him, loudly announcing he's here to welcome Xenos back to Golden Phoenix. But before Astan even finishes his sentence, Xenos firmly rejects the offer. Astan's in total disbelief. He honestly thought Xenos would jump at the chance to rejoin the party. But Xenos immediately lists every single horrible thing Astan put him through before, from terrible treatment to pathetic pay. As far as Xenos is concerned, there's zero reason to go back. Still, he tells Astan that if he's really desperate, he could consider joining them occasionally, but things won't be like before. Xenos refuses to work for scraps again. This time Astan needs to pay fair. He sets the price at 50,000 for basic healing and a full million for critical healing. And that's just for starters. Astan would need to cough up even more for Xenos' defensive magic and buffs. If Astan's not ready to pay, then there's nothing else to discuss. Xenos turns around to walk away again. Astan's pride kicks in, enraged that Xenos would dare refuse him. He impulsively draws his sword, planning to strike. But before he even moves, Krishna blasts him hard. She steps forward, shaking her head, reminding Astan it's incredibly stupid to openly attack someone right in front of a royal knight. Krishna originally came here just to see Xenos, but now she has to arrest Astan for attempted assault. Astan freaks out at the thought of prison and takes off running down the street. After dealing with all that chaos, Xenos and Lily finally head home. A bit later, Linga, Zofia, and Lo drop by to see Xenos. They tell him Astan tried hiring each of them to find him, even though all three turned him down instantly. Zofia's worried Astan won't stop there. If Astan gets desperate enough, he might try going to the illegal underground guild and hiring an assassin to get back at Xenos. Still, hiring assassins isn't cheap, and considering Astan came crawling to the slums instead of just recruiting new members, chances are he's broke anyway. But even with that reassurance, Zofia stays concerned. She mentions hearing rumors about a mysterious guy known as the Guide who supposedly takes on assassination jobs for free under special conditions. If Astan somehow convinces that guy, Xenos could be in real trouble. Later that night, Xenos is having a hard time sleeping, stressed from seeing Astan again. Carmilla notices he's still up, so she comes downstairs to check on him, genuinely worried. While they're talking, Carmilla brings up what she heard about Xenos learning healing magic in the slums. Xenos explains he was actually trying to bring a corpse back to life, and healing magic just kind of clicked for him after that. Carmilla reminds him resurrection magic is strictly forbidden, but Xenos honestly had no clue about that when he first attempted it. Talking about forbidden spells reminds Carmilla of something similar from when she was still alive. Back then, during the Demon Lord's era, artificial life like golems were created and frequently used in wars, all powered by dark, forbidden magic. Just then, Xenos hears loud noises coming from outside. Carmilla quickly offers to check it out, and when she steps outside, she's stunned. A large section of the slums is up in flames as a giant golem tears through the streets, causing total chaos. Turns out Astan really was base enough to hire someone to take Xenos out. But he was way too broke for regular assassins and ended up getting referred to the Guide instead. The Guide said he'd take the job free of charge, but he wanted to hear the whole story first to see if it was worth his time. After Astan laid everything out, the Guide found it hilarious how selfish and pathetic he was, but it sounded fun enough, and he's been itching to test out a new toy anyway. Back in the present, Xenos and Carmilla have just made it into town, and the damage looks even worse up close. Linga, Loa, and Zofia quickly join them, begging Xenos for help since so many people got hurt during the golem's rampage. Xenos asks if they have any clue where this thing came from, but they have no idea. The only lead they've got is that the golem showed up from somewhere deep in the slums, but that doesn't really clear anything up. Hearing that the golem appeared from deep within the slums, Xenos worries the underground guild might be involved, but right now, they don't have time to speculate. Instead, he tells everyone to round up the injured and get them to one spot so he can start healing. Once he's done taking care of that, he's determined to find whoever's behind this and make them pay for it. Meanwhile, from a safe distance, the Guide watches the chaos unfold and seems pretty satisfied with the golem's destructive power, though he thinks its speed could use a bit more work. Still, it's more than enough to handle the job he took. He doesn't know much about Xenos yet, but he's definitely excited to see how he'll react once his friends start dying around him. Back in the city, Linga, Loa, and Zofia quickly organize their troops, instructing them to find all the injured townspeople and bring them to Xenos. Once everyone's gathered up, Xenos prepares a healing spell, warning Carmilla to step back to avoid accidentally banishing her. He casts High Heal across the entire area, immediately making everyone feel better, and he tells them all to evacuate as soon as they can. Afterwards, Xenos walks around to heal anyone left out of the spell's range, but he's seriously pissed about the whole thing. Not only was he dragged out in the middle of the night, but he had to patch up hundreds of people with no guarantee he'll even see a dime for his trouble. He's gonna make the golem master pay dearly, but right now, he has no clue where the guy is or why he even unleashed all this chaos in the first place. Back with the Guide, he's surprised Xenos managed to heal every single person who got hurt, because he was sure at least a few people would bite the dust in all that chaos. Just looking at Xenos, it's clear he's a top-tier healer, but no matter how many people he patches up, that golem won't stop wrecking everything until someone takes it down for good. Xenos just finished healing everyone, and the town's already evacuated, but the golem is still going wild. Xenos wonders if maybe it'll just get bored and leave, but Carmilla shuts that idea down fast. She tells him golems never stop until they finish whatever job they were given, and this one's clearly ordered to flatten the entire slums, meaning it'll keep going until nothing's left. Still, the high-purity magic stones used to create golem cores were supposed to have been totally depleted during the Great War, so she's confused how someone even managed to find such rare items now. Xenos was hoping he could finally catch a break, but there's no way he can let this thing keep destroying the city, so he's got to deal with it himself before things spiral any further. The trio from Totally Spies step up, offering to join him, and Xenos checks if they're really okay with that since he might not have time to heal them if things go south. They know the risks perfectly well, but they still want to help protect their home. Xenos appreciates having backup, but they'll need a strategy, so he asks Carmilla how they're supposed to actually stop a golem. She tells him they'll have to destroy the magic stone that acts as the golem's core, or else it'll keep going forever. Xenos is kinda bummed hearing that, since he was hoping to snag the core intact and sell it off later for some easy money, but whatever. He tells everyone to hit the golem with everything they've got while he covers them. The trio rushes forward immediately. As they charge in, Xenos hits them with an agility buff to speed them up. and right as they're about to strike, he follows it up with a strength boost, giving them enough power to smash through the golem's leg. With one leg destroyed, the golem topples over and crashes to the ground, but the victory doesn't last long. That magic stone in its core allows the golem to regenerate endlessly, meaning it's far from over. The golem suddenly swats Linga aside, hitting her so hard she crashes straight through 3 houses before finally stopping. Under ordinary circumstances, every bone in her body would have shattered from that impact, but thanks to Xenos' magic, she's totally fine. It's been a while since Xenos jumped into a real fight like this, so he's a bit rusty, but he's quickly getting his groove back. He only gotta remember 2 things. First, he can't drift too far from the crew or his buffs start acting up. Second, since the healing speed and power buffs all need their own setup, he can't pop them all at once. He's gotta switch them around depending on what the situation calls for. After trading blows for a bit, Xenos notices the golem's regeneration isn't instant, meaning if they deal enough damage quickly, they can immobilize it. He tells the girls to break both of the golem's legs at once, and when they do, the golem starts tipping over again, but there's a problem. Zofia suddenly spots a kid hiding in one of the houses, directly beneath the falling golem. Xenos can't cast defensive magic from this distance, so he sprints toward the girl, trying to save her from getting crushed. He doesn't reach her in time, and by all logic, the kid should have been flattened, but somehow, the golem stops itself right at the last second to avoid hurting her. Carmilla can't wrap her head around it, because as far as she knows, golems shouldn't even have the instinct to protect anyone. There must be something different about this one, and Xenos figures it out quickly after scanning it. Astan is trapped inside. Meanwhile, the guide is honestly impressed that Xenos connected the dots this quickly, but it won't really help him anyway. The magic crystal the guide used was defective, so he couldn't make a proper golem core. Instead, he decided to experiment using a human as a catalyst, and Astan made the perfect test subject. The guide tricked Astan and implanted the magic stone in his body, permanently fusing him with the golem. Now the guide's curious to see how Xenos handles this twist. Considering all the lives Xenos just saved, killing the golem won't exactly be easy for him. Xenos takes a deep breath and turns to the others, calmly telling them to clear out. The girls don't totally get why he's sending them off when they're this close to putting the golem down. But whatever Xenos figured out, he's clearly planning to finish this solo. Even if they're not sure what's going on, they trust his call and back off quick to give him space. After everyone else clears out, Xenos tells Astan it's finally time to settle things between them for good. Their relationship started back when Astan pulled Xenos out of the slums, but even then he always had selfish motives behind it. Still, just now, he chose to protect that kid, and it reminds Xenos of something Guile mentioned a while back. Astan's obsession with money and power all started after his little sister died because he couldn't afford a healer. Ever since he's chased wealth at all costs, and seeing that girl probably triggered the memory of his sister, causing him to act on instinct. That doesn't wipe away all the messed up stuff Astan's done, but it does make Xenos wonder if there might still be some tiny shred of humanity left in him. Either way, Astan clearly isn't in control of himself anymore, leaving Xenos with no real choice, so he pulls out his scalpel. Astan tries to squash him immediately, but Xenos dodges and quickly transforms his scalpel into a sword, slicing off both of Astan's golem arms. He then leaps into the air and slashes right through the golem's chest, exposing Astan's actual body. He's not exactly thrilled about doing this, but he can't let Astan keep causing chaos, so he delivers a clean slash across Astan's chest. From his hiding spot, the guide is surprised Xenos killed Astan so decisively. But then again, considering how much Astan mistreated Xenos, he figures revenge makes sense. But in reality, Xenos isn't trying to kill Astan at all. He's carefully destroying only the parts that are fused to the magic stone, while healing Astan at the same time to keep him alive. The guide is genuinely stunned that Xenos is capable of such precise control, especially after healing hundreds of people earlier. Personally, Xenos wouldn't mind if Astan dropped dead right here and now, but somebody's gotta foot the bill for all the damage caused tonight. And he knows Astan's too broke to cover the cost himself. There's no way Xenos will let him die until he snitches on whoever built this golem. Besides, even though Astan is a worthless jerk, Xenos can't deny that without that gold coin Astan gave him as severance, he never would have been able to save Lily or open his clinic in the first place. But most important of all, as a healer, Xenos swore to save as many lives as possible, and that includes Astan's sorry ass. Xenos raises his sword and delivers one last slash directly into the magic stone, shattering it completely and freeing Astan from the golem. Things finally calm down, and when Astan regains consciousness, he genuinely sees how incredible Xenos really is. He was partially aware while trapped inside the golem, so he clearly saw Xenos supporting the faction leaders during the fight, and he suddenly realizes Xenos must have been doing the same thing back when he was in Astan's party. Getting betrayed and used like a lifeless puppet made Astan finally see just how big of a jerk he's been, and he knows nothing he says can make up for all the messed up stuff he's done, but he still wants to apologize. Xenos can't stand seeing Astan grumbling and looking all pathetic, so he tells him to lift his head, not because he forgives him, but because he wants a clear shot before he goes home. He's been waiting forever to punch Astan right in the face, but hitting him while he was unconscious didn't feel fair. Now that Astan's awake, Xenos has no reason to hold back. He activates a 10x strength boost, walks up slowly, and throws the most satisfying punch of his life. Astan's knocked out cold, and when he eventually wakes up a few hours later, he sees Krishna standing right over him. She tells him she already ran into Xenos earlier, so she pretty much knows what went down here. Astan should consider himself lucky there weren't any deaths tonight, or else he'd be looking at murder charges. Still, Krishna's arresting him for plenty of other crimes, including property destruction, assault, and even public indecency, since Xenos' punch literally knocked every stitch of clothing right off him. Krishna also has a message from Xenos. She lets Astan know that Xenos took his sword while he was out. It was high-quality gear, so if Xenos sells it, it'll probably cover all the property damage Astan caused. Krishna adds one more thing, another message from Xenos, telling Astan to check his hand. When Astan opens it, he finds a single gold coin. Xenos left it as severance pay, along with a final request. He never wants to see or hear from Astan ever again. Astan just stares at the ground, completely defeated. He knows he deserves all this, but now he's really left with nothing. After everything he's been through today, Xenos is so drained he can barely stand up straight. The others are worried and offer to carry him back home, but Xenos tells them it's fine, knowing they're probably just as exhausted. Still, the girls insist on carrying him anyway, because Xenos always helps them out, and now it's their turn to return the favor. At the same time, back at the clinic, Carmilla already filled Lily in on everything that happened. So when Xenos finally gets home, Lily greets him warmly and offers to make him a nice cup of tea. Krishna's been doing her best to figure out who was really behind the golem incident, but she hasn't managed to gather much so far. The only thing she knows for sure is that the person calls himself the Guide, and he's hard as hell to pin down. She tried tracking him, but there wasn't much of a trail. The spot where Astan met with him had already been cleared out with no traces left behind. Zofia also did a little digging around the underground guild, and based on what she heard, the Guide only started showing up there not long ago. Other than that, no one seems to know anything about him, so questioning the folks around here isn't going to get them anywhere. Krishna said she's going to label the Guide as a dangerous individual and keep pursuing him, but with how good he is at hiding his trail, she doubts he's going to show up anytime soon. Zofia disagrees, thinks the Guide's the type to come back eventually. People like him don't vanish unless they're planning something big, and if that's what's going on, then they need to be ready for whatever he's cooking up. Krishna tells her to stop throwing out guesses with nothing to back them up, but Zofia claps back, reminding her that she was making guesses a few minutes ago too. Xenos steps in and tells them both to chill out. Then he asks Krishna why she's been sitting at a table way across the room like she's allergic to everyone, since it makes it hard to talk like this. Krishna explains that even though she's thankful for Zofia's help the other day, her role as a royal knight means she can't be seen just hanging out with demi-humans like this. Xenos can already see where this is going, and he wants no part of it. So before things get any worse, he kicks everyone outside and tells them not to come back for the rest of the day unless they're injured. Once the place finally quiets down, Xenos sits at his desk and tries to relax for a bit, but then Lily walks over, clearly nervous, and says she's got an idea. She knows he must be drained after everything that happened with the golem, so she's about to suggest they go to a hot spring to unwind. But before she can finish, Zofia crashes through the door first and beats her to it, asking Xenos if he wants to go to a hot spring to relax. Xenos thinks that doesn't sound half bad, so he agrees, and Zofia leaves looking way too proud of herself. Not long after, Linga shows up, and after glancing around to make sure none of the others are nearby, she quietly asks Xenos if he wants to go to the hot spring with her. Xenos still thinks the idea sounds good, but he can't exactly say yes, since Zofia already beat her to it. Before he can even explain that, Linga cuts him off, says she'll meet him there, and walks off with a smile. Shortly after that, Lo appears. Xenos doesn't even need to hear her speak. He already knows where this is going. Sure enough, she was going to ask him to join her at the hot spring, and since Xenos guessed it right away, she takes it as confirmation, thanks him, and says she'll be waiting at the spring. Moments later, the exact same thing happens with Krishna. By this point, Xenos is seriously starting to wonder if Mr. Bean is giving away free autographs at the hot spring, because people keep showing up like it's the place to be. He then remembers that Lily was about to ask him something before they got interrupted. She stays quiet though, not wanting to admit that she was going to ask him the exact same thing as everyone else. Carmilla overhears the whole scene from the hallway and finds the entire thing hilarious. Lily spent all that time building up the courage to speak, only for the others to steamroll right past her. Xena, of course, has no idea what she's laughing about. Carmilla figures the hot spring is shaping up to be entertaining, and since it's been a while since she's gone to one herself, she casually decides she's tagging along too. Later on, Xenos is finally soaking in the hot spring, enjoying enjoying some peace and quiet. That doesn't last long. Zofia walks in like she owns the place. He reminds her that this is the men's bath, but Zofia just shrugs and says it's fine. She put a warning sign outside saying the bath's dangerous now, so nobody should disturb them. Truth is, she came in fully ready to throw herself at him, but decided to play it safe and settle for a casual conversation while they soak. She brings up how people keep telling her she's changed ever since she met him, and Xenos admits it's true, she's way less aggressive now compared to how she used to be. But right now, what's got his attention is how close she's getting. Zofia was hoping the conversation would soften him up so she could sneak in a move, but since she gets caught, she switches tactics and tries to wrestle her way into his arm. Right then, Linga bursts in and yells at Zofia for sneaking ahead and trying to claim Xenos for herself. Linga's got the same motive though, so she starts pretending to feel faint, stumbling towards Xenos like she's about to pass out. Zofia's not letting that happen. She grabs Linga mid-stumble and starts dragging her away from him. As the two of them wrestle, Loa casually emerges from the water and says if they're going to be fighting over Xenos, then she wants in on the fun too. Xenos looks at Lo and asks what she's even doing here, and why she's not wearing a towel. She casually explains that she's been hiding underwater, waiting for the perfect moment to have Xenos all to herself. As for the towel, she didn't want anything getting in the way. She wanted to give Xenos a clear view of her toned physique, and she straight up asks him what he thinks. Xenos can barely see anything with a light behind her, but even if he could, none of this changes how bizarre the situation feels. He just stays where he is, hoping the girls will wear themselves out and leave. But then of course Krishna storms in and starts yelling at everyone for causing such a mess in the men's bath. Before she can finish, the others immediately call her out, saying she's clearly here for the same reason, trying to sneak some alone time with Xenos. Krishna says that's not the point, but it's too late. Now all four of them are arguing over Xenos like it's some kind of prize fight. He's had enough. He snaps and tells all of them to get out and head back to their own bath. The shouting is so loud that Yumin hears it from the women's side. She can't believe there are girls bold enough to sneak into the men's bath, but honestly she just hopes those weirdos don't ruin her peaceful getaway. A few minutes later, the girls return to the women's side. They're clearly bummed out that Xenos shut them down, but weirdly enough, they're getting along just fine now. Yumin watches them for a second, kind of surprised. It's not every day you see a human, a lizard girl, an ogre, and a werewolf girl all joking and chatting like old friends. Once bath time is over, everyone gathers around for a big feast. The energy's good, everyone's laughing, but Krishna's still stuck in her own head, not quite ready to admit she enjoys hanging out with this group. She's on the edge of joining in, but fighting it hard. Later that night, Xenos tucks Lily into bed and steps out onto the balcony. Carmilla's already out there waiting, and she asks if he's finally enjoying himself. Xenos says the meal was fun at least until people started getting drunk and trying to use him as a chair. Carmilla laughs and tells him to enjoy the harmless chaos while it lasts, because she's pretty sure things are going to get a whole lot messier real soon. Xenos groans and tells her to knock it off before she jinxes him, but it's already too late. A wraith's instincts don't miss. Speaking of which, he suddenly remembers something. Wraiths can't be in the sun for too long, so he asks her how she even managed to come all the way out here. Carmilla casually explains that she just possessed that staff over there and asked Lily to carry it. Wraiths can only bind to objects they were attached to in life, so Xenos asks what she was doing back then. Carmilla dodges the question and changes the subject, offering to pour him a drink instead. The next day, a massive explosion rocks the kitchen, and Yumin rushes over to see what happened. She finds one of the owners flat on the floor, badly burned. Turns out he was prepping breakfast when the fire magic stones inside the stove blew up, and the blast did a number on him. Yumin jumps into action right away. She's a healer, so she does what she can. She manages to stabilize him, but when it comes to restoring his arm completely, that's beyond her skill level. She tells the others they need to get him to the nearest royal hospital as fast as possible. Even then, chances are the arm won't ever work the same again. That's when Xenos strolls in to check out the noise. Yumin asks if he can help her move the injured man to the hospital, but from Xenos' perspective, the injury doesn't look that serious. He doesn't think it's worth the trip. He's got somewhere to be anyway, so he turns to leave, but just before walking off with Lily, as a thank you for the fun at the hot spring, he casually heals the man for free. Yumin watches him go, and at first, she thinks he's a cold jerk for ignoring a guy who clearly needed help. But when she glances down, she notices something strange. The man's wounds are completely gone. She stands there in shock, wondering for a split second if her magic somehow did that, but she knows better. She's not nearly that skilled. Only saints or elite level healers could pull that off, so it hits her Xenos must be one of them. She hurries back to the clinic to report it to her boss, and Bernardo's eyebrows shoot up when he hears there's an elite level healer wandering around. Someone like that would usually be scouted as a national asset, but tracking him down is going to be tough, especially since all Yumin remembers is that he had black hair. Bernardo shrugs at first. If Xenos healed a man for free and didn't make a big deal about it, then maybe he's just a good guy doing his thing. Nothing wrong with letting someone like that roam around. But then Yumin casually mentions that Xenos was wearing a black overcoat, and something about that detail makes Bernardo stop thinking so lightly about it. He changes his mind and says maybe it's worth trying to find him after all. Yumin's cool with that, but she's curious how Bernardo plans to track him down. Bernardo thinks for a minute, then says if there are no official records of Xenos anywhere, that probably means he's not a licensed healer, so odds are he's working out out of the slums, and lucky for him, Bernardo already has the perfect plan to sniff him out. Sometime that afternoon, Zahn storms into Zenos' clinic with Bernardo in his arms, looking like the man's barely hanging on. He doesn't know who this guy is, but he was coughing up a ton of blood and collapsed right in front of him, so he brought him straight here. Zenos tells everyone to back off for now, warning that the guy could be contagious. He starts a quick scan to assess the damage, and from what he sees, the guy's lungs are completely wrecked. It reminds him of red lung disease, so he tells Lily to stay back just in case. Red lung wiped out a lot of people back in the day. It spreads fast, and it's brutal, but it was supposed to be completely eradicated after the cure came out, so Zenos has no clue how someone like this could have picked it up. Right then, Bernardo sits up and starts talking like nothing happened. He's actually impressed that Zenos was able to figure it out so quickly. He introduces himself as one of the elite healers from the Royal Hospital, though as he admits, healing magic isn't exactly his strong suit. Yumin rushes in behind him, out of breath and clearly pissed off. She scolds Bernardo for doing something that reckless, faking an illness like red lung just to meet Zenos. But Bernardo says he didn't have much of a choice, even if it hurt like hell. He reaches into his coat, pulls out a bottle, and downs the content. Turns out he took a drug that mimicked red lung symptoms, so the locals would take him straight to Zenos. But now that he's got the antidote, the symptoms should start fading. Zenos stares at him and asks what kind of guy even carries a drug like that around. Bernardo explains he developed it years ago while he was working on a cure for red lung. That catches Zenos off guard. It means Bernardo's the doctor who created the vaccine and earned the title of elite healer for it. Setting that aside, Bernardo tells Zenos the real reason he came here. The black coat Zenos wears reminded him of someone from the past, so he had to confirm it. He asks where the coat came from, and Zenos says it belonged to his teacher, though he hasn't seen him in a long time and doesn't know where he is now. Moving on, Bernardo gets to the point. He wants Zenos to come work with him at the Royal Hospital, because there's something going on over there, and he could use help from someone like him. That's when the girls show up, and the energy changes fast. They heard some strange guy was giving Zenos a hard time, and they're ready to throw hands. Bernardo quickly reassures them he's not here to push Zenos into anything. He's offering a contract, plain and simple. Zenos tells them he's fine with it. Zofia still seems unsure and asks if he's really okay with this, but Zenos nods. He figures it's the smart move. Now that the Royal Hospital knows about his underground clinic, it's better to have someone like Bernardo on his side. And more importantly, back when red lung was tearing through the slums, Bernardo made sure people got the cure for free. That kind of compassion isn't easy to forget, so yeah, Zenos believes he can trust him. Zenos shows up at the Royal Hospital with Bernardo and Yumin, part of the deal they made earlier, and the second they walk in, he's stunned by how massive the place is. They head over to Bernardo's office, and once Zenos gets a moment to settle, Bernardo lays out what he needs from him. There's been a string of disappearances lately, and he wants Zenos to check things out. Zenos doesn't mind lending a hand, but sneaking around isn't really his thing, so he asks Bernardo if he's sure he wants someone like him doing this kind of job. Bernardo says now that he's officially with the Royal Hospital, he'll have access to tools and programs that'll help him find the info he needs. Even so, Zenos is nervous about standing out too much and blowing his cover. But Bernardo already thought of that. He's come up with a whole story. Zenos has been overseas studying and just came back. Zenos doubts something that basic would hold up, but Bernardo says it's fine. If a top-tier healer vouches for him, no one's gonna dig deeper. Later, Yumin takes Zenos over to the dorms where he'll be staying for the next few weeks. When he gets there, he's surprised to see Lily already inside. He asks what she's doing here, and Yumin explains that Bernardo approved the paperwork to let her move in. According to the rules, healers can live with a spouse or close relative, and Lily jokes that this technically makes her his wife now. But Yumin actually registered her as Zenos' younger sister. She figured having someone familiar around would help him settle in, and truth be told, Zenos was stressed about leaving her behind anyway, so he's thankful she set this up. After that, Yumin heads out to give him space. Not long after she leaves, Carmilla shows up too. Zenos gets why Lily's here, but he's got no clue what brought Carmilla all the way to the capital. Turns out, she doesn't have a good reason, she just likes sticking close to Zenos since things always get interesting around him. Zenos points out that with this place crawling with healers, she might get exorcised if someone spots her. Carmilla doesn't seem the least bit worried though, because aside from Zenos, not many people here are strong enough to even try. Not long after, Zenos is chillin' in the cafeteria with Yumin, and she checks in, asking how he's settling into this new place. He tells her it's alright so far, but he's about to be slammed with work for a while. Plus, he still has no clue how he's even supposed to get an official healing license. Yumin says she's got him covered since she knows the whole deal. First thing is taking a healing aptitude test. If you pass, you get into the Royal Healing Academy. Then it's years of brutal studying before you can even sit for the licensing exam. Sounds like a nightmare, and Zenos can't believe healers actually go through all that. But Yumin tells him that's just the start. After you get licensed, there's another test if you want to work in the field as an adventurer. Same goes if you're looking to join the military. Want a promotion as a healer, more exams. Most folks here are either doing research or chasing higher education. But to Xenos, this all sounds like a giant headache. So he cuts to the point and tells Yumin to talk about the missing people instead. She tells him one of the missing was a dude named Afreed. He was a top-tier healer and did research here. Real smart and kind too. Bernardo even said he played a big role in developing the red lung cure. Xenos figures if the guy's that solid, then he's worth tracking down. But he still doesn't know much about the case, so he asks if there's any lead to go on. Right then, the cafeteria doors swing open and this guy walks in. Xenos asks who he is, and Yumin tells him that's Goldrin, the vice director of the Royal Hospital and a Class 7 advanced healer. Xenos has no idea what that means, so she breaks it down. There are 3 ranks: beginner, advanced, and elite. Each one has 7 levels. Class 7 advanced is as high as it gets before hitting elite status. Basically, Goldrin's a big shot around here, and Yumin says he's even running to be the next director. The current director's barely around anymore, he's ancient, so Goldrin pretty much runs things now. But the hospital's gotten real different under his control. Yumin doesn't think that's a good thing. If you're rich, you get VIP treatment. If you're poor, best case you get a cheap ice pack and maybe a smiley face sticker. Goldrin doesn't even try to get better at healing, and word going around is that he bought his way up to level 7. Xenos already has a solid idea of what kind of guy he's dealing with and would rather keep his distance. But that's not really an option, since Yumin thinks Goldrin might be connected to Alfred's disappearance. Goldrin's all about rising through the ranks fast, so he grabs any talented person he can find, and Alfred was one of them. Xenos wants to know if Goldrin said anything about Alfred going missing, but the guy denied being involved. Xenos knows what he's gotta do now, but reaching someone like Goldrin ain't exactly easy. Yumin tells him not to stress over that part. If Xenos shows off how good he is in one of the hospital's programs, Goldrin will come to him. Xenos knows he's got talent, but he never had a real chance to see how he stacks up against other healers, so he's not sure how it'll go. Still, he's willing to take the shot. Right then, one of Yumin's buddies, Crescent, shows up and asks why she's eating all by herself in the corner. She fires back that she can eat wherever she wants. Crescent totally misses the message and acts like she's just being coy. Then he spots Xenos and realizes he's that new student who got in with help from an elite healer. That stings a little, so he tosses Xenos a snarky comment about not embarrassing his sponsor and walks off. Xenos looks over at Yumin like, what was that about? So she explains that Crescent's one of her classmates. He's alright, but ever since Goldrin picked him up, he's been acting all high and mighty. Way back when Xenos was still a kid, he found a dead body in some alley and started practicing healing spells on it, hoping to bring it back. But before he could pull off some zombie nonsense, his future master came out of nowhere and whacked him on the head, told him it was a waste to use his magic on the dead, and that he should be using it to help folks who are still breathing. From then on, the guy took Xenos in and started teaching him healing magic, along with another kid named Veritra. After a year of hard work, they both became impressive healers. But their master made it clear not to get cocky, cause patching up a few cuts doesn't make you anything more than a third-rate healer. Back in class, Xenos is sitting through his first real lecture as a student, and the day's lesson is all about undead monsters. As things move along, he's actually kind of impressed. Most of its stuff he already picked up back when he was adventuring. But the way the material's being explained makes it super beginner-friendly. Even someone totally new would keep up without trouble. At one point, the professor pauses and asks if anyone's got a question. A student raises his hand and brings up wraiths. Turns out, the professor doesn't have much to say about them other than that they're at the top of the undead food chain. Almost no one who's seen one lives to talk about it. And every report ends in the same way. The whole party wiped out. If you ever see one, best bet is to get out of there. The ones that can speak are even worse. That kind of intelligence usually means they're insanely strong. Xenos wasn't expecting that, since he's got one of those talkative wraiths, Carmilla, literally living with Lily. He had no idea she was that dangerous, but obviously he keeps his mouth shut to avoid stirring up panic. Then the professor asks if anyone's had personal experience with undead, and Crescent shoots his hand up first. He introduces himself, says he used to do some adventuring, and claims he's taken out 30 ghosts. The class gets excited hearing that and starts clapping, and Crescent soaks it in. But then he notices Xenos isn't clapping, trying to call him out. He turns to Xenos and asks how many ghosts he's taken out. Xenos could probably handle 50 if it came to it, but he's not trying to show off. So instead, he casually says he's taken down 30 as well. Crescent immediately accuses him of lying, but Xenos stands his ground and repeats it 30 ghosts in one fight. That's when the room goes quiet. The students catch the detail about doing it all in one battle and start pressing him for more. Xenos explains that he once cleared out an underground labyrinth that was crawling with spirits, just kept casting heal spells until they were gone. It doesn't take long before they all realize he's talking about the Garmenton Labyrinth, a place so dangerous even gold-class adventurers avoid it. That alone is enough to convince them Xenos isn't bluffing. The whole class is impressed, but Crescent is still fuming. He just can't stand the idea that Xenos might have actually upstaged him. The next class is all about magic circles, and this time Crescent picks the seat right next to Xenos, clearly trying to one-up him. Xenos never put much thought into magic circles. He's always figured they're just slow and unnecessary. But he still shows up because missing class ain't really an option. The professor draws a simple circle on the board and asks if anyone wants to try drawing it themselves. Crescent instantly shoots up from his seat like he's been waiting all week for this. He walks up and draws a perfectly clean circle for a basic heal spell. The professor nods, clearly impressed. Then Crescent turns to the class and says Xenos wants to give it a shot too. Xenos wasn't planning on it, but now everyone's staring, so he doesn't have a choice. He doesn't know much about these circles, but he remembers one strange design his master once showed him. So he grabs the chalk and draws that one from memory. Crescent starts laughing immediately because it looks nothing like the ones from the textbook. But the second the professor takes a look, he goes completely still. What Xenos drew isn't some beginner-level heal spell, it's a full-on regeneration circle, but it's different. Xenos explains that it's meant to regrow a lost finger, but it picks one at random and burns way more mana than necessary. Most folks wouldn't be able to activate it. Xenos can pull it off with ease, though he doesn't think it's useful since he can heal stuff like that faster on his own. The professor realizes Xenos isn't just talented, he's got something special and begs him to join his research lab. Xenos politely turns the offer down. At the same time, Crescent's boiling inside, sitting there like he's about to explode from the lack of attention. Later that day, Goldrin hears whispers about some new student who supposedly took down 30 ghosts in one go. He says he doesn't have time for silly rumors. But right then, someone walks in with an urgent report undead are showing up in the graveyard. Goldrin comes up with an idea on the spot. He'll send Xenos with the next exorcism squad. If the kid lives up to the hype, maybe he'll consider bringing him in. That night, Xenos joins the squad. Crescent's the one leading the group, walking out like he owns the place. But once they reach the graveyard and get surrounded, he panics. Right before things fall apart, Xenos steps up and casts a high-level healing spell that wipes every ghost clean off the field. Xenos tells them they did a solid job pulling the ghosts in close enough for him to wipe them out. But before he finishes his sentence, Crescent steps up and starts claiming the credit for the high-level heal spell. Since none of the students actually saw what happened, they end up believing him when he says he's the one who saved them. Then he tells them to go report to their professors about how amazing he is. After that, he strolls over to Xenos and straight up tells him he'll never acknowledge his talent. Xenos doesn't care at all. He's not bothered by Crescent's petty attempts to take the spotlight. However, if Crescent really wants all the praise for himself, then he shouldn't leave just yet, because the undead issue is far from over. Crescent has no clue what Xenos is talking about, but seconds later, the ground cracks open and a zombie king rises up from below. The other students are in shock that something as dangerous as a zombie king actually appeared, but none of them feel worried. They figure Crescent's got it covered. He'll have to deal with it on his own, though cause none of them want to get anywhere near that monster. Xenos and Human could jump in, but they figure they might as well let Crescent handle it without any help. To his credit, Crescent does try, casts his strongest heal spell at the creature, but it barely makes a dent. He doesn't stand a chance against that thing, but he refuses to accept defeat, so he keeps running, dodging attacks to keep from getting flattened. While all that's happening, Human leans towards Xenos and says undead creatures usually show up when a more powerful one is nearby. That means the ghosts earlier probably appeared because of the zombie king, but Xenos feels like there's something else behind it all. At this point, Crescent's getting knocked around pretty bad. Xenos figures it's probably time to step in, but Human stops him. She still cares about Crescent, but wants him to learn something from this. He's been hanging in there by healing himself each time he slams into a wall, but eventually the zombie grabs him, and it looks like he's about to get eaten. That's when Xenos decides to move. He starts preparing one of his most powerful spells, and when it's charged up, he releases Mega Heal. A flood of bright healing light wraps around the zombie, and the wave of magic burns away its rotting body until it crumbles to dust. With that, the job's finally done. But what Human mentioned keeps echoing in Xenos' head. If powerful undead attract the weaker ones, then this might have happened for a reason. That's when he figures it out: the ghosts and the zombie king showed up because Carmilla is close. Once he's back home, Xenos asks Carmilla if she knows anything about the recent spike in undead activity around here. Honestly, she didn't even realize she was drawing monsters in. She looks at him, a little worried, and asks if he's planning to kick her out over this. Xenos pauses for a moment, thinking it through. Given how Carmilla seems to affect her surroundings, he figures it might actually be safer to keep her close instead. That catches her off guard. This is the first time in her entire undead existence that someone said they want her around. She gets flustered and promises she'll stick by his side from now on. Still, she makes sure to warn him she's not about to stop being a pain when she feels like it. The next morning, Crescent meets with his supervisor, who's ready to congratulate him on his stellar work during the exorcism. Based on the reports from the other students, it sounds like Crescent wiped out all the undead with one massive spell. But Crescent knows the truth: Xenos was the one who did it all. Since Crescent took all the credit at the time, the supervisor assumes Xenos isn't as impressive as people say, and says he won't be joining Goldrin's group. Crescent could keep walking, keep the praise, and stay quiet. but the guilt's eating at him, so he stops and admits the truth. He says Xenos is the one who took down all the undead, including the zombie king, and he watched the whole thing happen with his own eyes. After leaving the office, Crescen's clearly annoyed, admitting that cost him his credibility, and he knows it. But Xenos saved his life, and now that the truth is out, Crescen's pretty sure Xenos will get invited into the research lab. As far as he's concerned, that makes them even. A little while later, Bernardo shows up, all cheerful, and tells Xenos that Goldrin's research lab is calling for him. Looks like he's about to get recruited. Xenos is surprised though. He figured Crescen would have taken full credit for that whole exorcism mess. Either way, he's glad he cleared the first step in getting closer to Goldrin. But Bernardo reminds him there's more to it. Xenos still has to go through an interview with the professor. Xenos wonders why there's such a long process just to join a research group. But since Goldrin holds a ton of influence, he's real picky about who he lets into his inner circle. Xenos then asks why Goldrin even has that much power to begin with. He's only an advanced healer. Shouldn't someone like Bernardo, who's an elite healer, have more say? Bernardo shrugs and tells him that titles don't always mean influence. In his case, he earned his elite rank through drug development, which doesn't carry as much weight when it comes to clout. Xenos doesn't fully get the politics of all this, but he says he's heading out to answer Goldrin's summons. The others wish him luck as he heads off. He eventually reaches the meeting room, and once Goldrin introduces himself, he jumps straight to the point, asking Xenos what he can do. Xenos keeps it simple and says he's a healer, so he heals people. But Goldrin isn't satisfied with that answer. Any healer can patch someone up, but with talent like Xenos's, Goldrin says he should be aiming much higher. He assumes Xenos already knows how much power healers hold in this country. Honestly, it wouldn't be a stretch to say the nation exists because of them. Yet all the benefits go to the upper class. Goldrin goes on to explain that his goal is to join that upper class, and not for any noble cause. He wants in because he's tired of watching others profit off healers while he gets nothing. He says straight up that life only has value if you've got something to offer, and he has no plans to waste time helping the poor. After that little speech, he tells Xenos to recreate the magic circle he showed in class so he can evaluate him properly. Xenos isn't sure what drawing a circle is supposed to prove, but he goes ahead and does it. Once Goldrin sees the result, he stands up and tells Xenos he'll be joining the research lab starting tomorrow. Next day, Xenos is walking through the halls when the members of Goldrin's research team pass by. Near the back of the group, he spots Crescen, who casually tells him to hurry up and fall in line. Crescen gives him a smile and welcomes him to the lab, but then reminds him that since he joined first, Xenos should show some respect to his seniors. After all, the only reason Xenos got in is because Crescen recommended him. Xenos asks why Crescen even told the truth in the first place, since it would have been easier to lie and save face. Crescen admits it, he felt guilty, but also, he figured if he joined the group, he could ride Xenos' success for a bit. Xenos respects that at least he's being real about it, but now he wants to know why they're all standing in line like this. Crescen explains this is part of Goldrin's daily routine. He visits patients every morning. Xenos raises an eyebrow and wonders why he needs a whole squad just to check on one person. But Crescen says it's all about appearances. Goldrin only visits people in powerful positions, and this whole thing is just for show. Xenos didn't come here to parade around. He's trying to investigate Goldrin, and he can't do that from the back of the line. So he makes his move and sprints toward the front. The patient tells Goldrin that their foot's been hurting pretty bad since yesterday. Goldrin checks it out and sees it's nothing serious, just a minor sprain. He says he'll only need 3 of his subordinates to handle it. Xenos has no clue what that even means, but then he watches Goldrin cast a spell and start pulling energy from 3 students standing nearby. Goldrin uses that energy to heal the man's ankle, but it clearly takes a toll on the students he drained. Xenos hurries back over to Crescen and asks if he knows what kind of spell Goldrin just used. Crescen nods and explains that Goldrin specializes in health transfer magic. It's a technique that lets you shift life force from one person to another. That way, even a mid-tier healer can treat serious injuries. Basically, if someone's hurt, you can pass someone else's life force into them to boost their recovery. The more severe the injury, the more life force you need, so it usually gets split between multiple people. Most of the time, the side effects are pretty mild, just some fatigue. Xenos says that definitely explains why Goldrin keeps so many healers close. But Crescen tells him that's not the only reason. Word is, the current director, Shalbard, is getting ready to retire soon. So Goldrin is doing everything he can to build political support and secure votes for the next big election. Xenos thanks him for answering all his questions, but since they're already talking, he brings up Afreed. Crescen says he knows the guy, though he was never a fan. Apparently, Afreed got invited to one of Goldrin's dinner parties and then vanished right after. Xenos asks what exactly Crescen means by dinner party. So Crescen explains that Goldrin hosts private dinners for his favorite subordinates. It's supposed to be a huge honor, but Afreed went to one and then disappeared, and no one's heard from him since. Later on, Xenos shares everything he learned with Bernardo. He thinks he's done enough digging for now, but Bernardo says they're nowhere near finished. This does confirm Goldrin's connection to Afreed's disappearance, but it's not solid proof. What they need is for Xenos to become one of Goldrin's top picks and find a way into that dinner party. That's the only shot they have at uncovering what really happened. Bernardo even offers extra pay if Xenos can pull it off. Xenos was hoping to head home soon, but he agrees to stick around and keep investigating. Still, he makes one thing clear once this is over. Bernardo better tell him everything he knows about his old master. At the same time, back in the slums, Linga is busy working a lockpick into the door of Xenos' clinic. After some fidgeting, she finally manages to get it open. She's not there to cause trouble, she just wants to tidy up the place while he's gone. Of course, she wouldn't mind sniffing a few of his things while she's at it. Right then, Linga senses she's not alone. She gets ready to throw down, but instead of an intruder, it's Zofia. They both freeze for a second and ask what the other's doing here. That's when Linga spots the mop in Zofia's hand and realizes she probably had the same plan. A few moments later, the door gets kicked wide open. Low barges in like she owns the place. She's also here to clean the clinic for Xenos, just like the other two. Linga and Zofia kind of figured she'd show up eventually, though they definitely didn't want her breaking the door down. That's just one more thing they'll have to clean up. The next morning in the capital, Xenos runs into Crescent, who tells him he's been given the high honor of watching over Goldrin's beloved dog. But the truth is, Crescent's just trying to dump the dog duty on Xenos. Xenos starts wondering if Crescent even does real research, if this is the kind of work he's stuck with. Crescent explains that Goldrin is off meeting with the 7 major nobles he's been buttering up for months, which is why someone has to babysit the dog. Crescent doesn't seem to mind though. He figures doing little jobs like this will help him climb the ranks within the faction. Xenos asks him if he's seriously chasing a promotion, and Crescent says that's the whole point. If he moves up, he gets a seat among the nation's elite. That means status, wealth, and all the luxury he can handle. Xenos finds that a little odd. He always thought people became healers to actually help others, and maybe that's how it should be. But Crescent tells him that's not how the world works. He says there was a time when he dreamed of healing people, curing illnesses, and making a difference. But his magic has limits. It's not some miracle cure. Since he can't save everyone, he'd rather use what he's got to build a future for himself. Right then, a guy named Bonds strolls over and asks if Crescent got stuck watching Goldrin's dog again. Crescent shrugs and says he's just doing what needs to be done. But Bonds doesn't hold back. He tells Crescent that sucking up to Goldrin isn't going to be enough to get ahead in life. Then he walks off without another word. Xenos watches him go and turns to ask who that guy even was. Crescent explains that Bonds is Goldrin's first secretary, but Xenos finds that kind of hard to believe, considering how unbothered and careless the guy looked. Crescent gets it, but apparently Bonds has been close friends with Goldrin for years. That's the only reason he landed the job. The guy barely does anything and just coasts by on connections. Suddenly Bonds yells out Crescent's name. Guess he heard that last part because he chucks his bottle at Crescent. Luckily, the guy's too drunk to aim straight, so it misses. Unfortunately, the bottle lands near Goldrin's dog, and it freaks her out so bad that she takes off running. Crescent panics. If he loses Madame Milk, Goldrin will absolutely end him. He sprints after her, but just as she hits the street, a carriage zooms by and runs her over. Crescent rushes to her side and immediately starts healing her. He hits her with high heel, trying everything he can to fix the damage. But Milk's body is completely flattened. Even with all that effort, it's not enough to get her back to normal. Xenos steps in and tells him not to stress. He stopped the bleeding, and that's what matters. But Crescent says that's not enough. Even if she survives, she's gonna have scars, and the whole reason Goldrin loves Milk is because of her soft, perfect fluff. Once he sees her like this, Crescent's life is over. Xenos doesn't want to see him go down like that, so he raises his hand and starts healing Milk himself. Crescent tries to stop him, saying it's not that simple. Healing skin properly takes serious finesse, and not even high-level magic can pull that off without precision. You'd need an elite healer to regenerate damaged tissue cleanly. But while Crescent's busy ranting, Xenos finishes the job. Milk is completely healed. Not a single scratch left. Her ribs are fixed. Her body's perfectly round again, and it's like she was never touched. Xenos says she should take it easy for the rest of the day though. Later, Xenos heads back home and finds Human already waiting for him. He asks if something's going on, but she says she just came to ask if he'd take a walk with her. He's a little thrown off, but he agrees, and once they're out in the woods, he figures she's got something to say. She turns to him and apologizes, saying if she wasn't so weak, maybe she could have gotten Goldrin's attention herself, and Xenos wouldn't have had to get involved in this whole mess. Xenos tells her to knock that off. Bernardo's already paying him for helping out, and more importantly, if none of this happened, he never would have gotten a shot at the Royal Hospital or learned anything new about his master. It's a huge opportunity, so there's nothing for her to feel bad about. Human looks relieved, but now that he brought it up, she realizes she doesn't know much about this master he keeps mentioning. She asks what kind of guy he was. Xenos thinks for a second and admits he doesn't really know. The man was pretty shady if he's being honest, but he was the one who taught him how to read, write, and heal. The stuff he learned from that guy shaped his entire life, so he owes him everything. That hits close for Human. She says it's kind of the same with her and Bernardo. Back when she was just starting out as a healer, Bernardo took her under his wing and taught her all sorts of things tied to his research. His dedication so intense his girlfriend couldn't take it and walked out. So Yuman's been the one looking after him since. Zenos raises an eyebrow at that. The way she says it sounds a little too familiar, so he asks what exactly her relationship with Bernardo is. Yuman laughs and tells him Bernardo's her uncle, which is why they're tight like that. Not long after that, the two of them head back toward the royal hospital. But before they even reach the entrance, Crescent comes flying down the path in a full sprint. He skids to a stop right in front of them, drops to his knees, and starts begging Zenos for help. Just from the look on his face, Zenos can tell this ain't some minor inconvenience. Crescent's in real deep this time. Goldrin heads back to his office after having a pint with Lord Fennel. His second assistant greets him as usual, but he quickly notices something's not right. Goldrin looks off, so the assistant asks whether lunch didn't go well. Goldrin says it wasn't anything bad, but while they were chatting, Fennel mentions something about his daughter. Apparently, she's been dealing with a strange rash on her face and asked if Goldrin could do something to help. Goldrin takes a second to think about it and figures it's most likely the odd face disease. It's not dangerous, and eventually, it should clear up on its own. But if the girl wants it gone right away, then he'd need to surgically remove the infected area. That kind of operation would leave behind a massive scar, and there's no way she'd agree to that. He knows there's a better option. If he can get enough magic donors, he could transfer enough healing energy to fully regenerate her skin with no scarring. The issue is, she's so embarrassed by how her face looks right now, she barely lets anyone see her. At best, she might allow 1 or 2 assistants in the room, but that's probably all she'd tolerate. The whole situation is stressing Fennel out badly, so to settle his nerves, he heads off to check on his precious dog, Madam Milk. On his way there, he walks past Bonds, who casually jokes that Milk got hit by a carriage not long ago. Goldrin immediately snaps, assuming Bonds had something to do with it. But Bonds tells him to chill out because the dog walker who was with Milk used healing magic, so she should be fine now. Goldrin decides not to waste time arguing and hurries over to Milk's room to check on her himself. To his surprise, she's okay. A bit tired maybe, but no cuts, no bruises, not even a scar. Goldrin's stunned, didn't think anyone in the area had healing skills that clean. Since Crescent was the one in charge of watching Milk, he figures he must have been the one who healed her. That takes us right back to Crescent's situation. Goldrin told him to handle Lord Fennel's daughter, but truth is, he's way out of his league. He tells Zenos that Charlotte's got a case of odd face. Zenos doesn't see what the fuss is about. It's a harmless condition, just takes time, and it fades on its own. But Crescent explains that it's not that simple. Charlotte refuses to go out or show her face at social gatherings while she looks like that. So now, there's pressure to fix it fast. Zenos asks why he doesn't just cut the thing out, but Crescent shakes his head. The roots go too deep. If he tries that, he's gonna leave a huge scar across her face. And if he ruins the face of one of the top 7 nobles in the kingdom, that's the end for him. No one's gonna back him after that. Yuman steps in and asks why Goldrin even gave him such a serious job. So Crescent explains that Goldrin heard about what happened with Madam Milk and somehow thinks Crescent was the one who healed her. Yuman tells him he could just tell the truth that Zenos is the one who really pulled it off. But Crescent's afraid. He already took credit once, and if Goldrin finds out, he might get kicked out entirely. That's why he needs Zenos' help now more than ever to make this thing work. That's when Lily walks in, carrying a tray with tea. She introduces herself with a smile, saying she's Zenos' little sister. Crescent's caught off guard. He had no idea Zenos had a sister, much less one that cute. Lily giggles and tells him she appreciates the compliment, but she already belongs to Zenos, so he can forget about trying anything. That's not what Crescent meant, though. He tells her that since he and Zenos are close, she's basically like a little sister to him too. But Zenos quickly makes it clear he never said they were that close. The next morning, Goldrin takes Crescent to Lord Fennel's mansion, and Crescent brings Zenos along for backup. But as soon as they arrive, Fennel comes out looking panicked. He tells Goldrin there's a problem. Charlotte is refusing to go through with the surgery now. She says she doesn't want to risk scarring her face, but Fennel still believes in Goldrin. He trusts that he'll find a way to fix her without leaving a mark, so he asks him to try talking her into it. Goldrin agrees, and the whole group heads to Charlotte's room to talk to her. Fennel tries first. He tells her everything's going to be fine if she agrees to the operation, and that she can trust him. He's never lied to her before. But Charlotte shuts him down quick, bringing up the time he promised her a fox fur coat for her birthday and didn't get her anything. That one stings. It wasn't entirely Fennel's fault, but a broken promise is still a broken promise. He knows there's nothing else he can say now that'll convince her. Goldrin steps up and gives it a try. He speaks through the door and says he's a professor from the Royal Hospital, so she can count on him to make the surgery a success. But Charlotte still refuses. She thinks maybe someone paid him off to mess up her face on purpose. While Goldrin and Fennel keep trying to explain that the procedure is safe, Crescent starts daydreaming like a fool. In his head, if he manages to heal Charlotte's face perfectly, she might fall for him. Zenos hears all that nonsense but doesn't even waste energy pointing out how dumb it is. Crescent goes ahead anyway and asks Lord Fennel if he can speak to her. Then he introduces himself at the door as Goldrin's assistant. But the second he opens his mouth, Charlotte tells him his voice is irritating, and he has no right to talk to her. Since everyone else crashed and burned, Goldrin turns to Xenos and asks him to give it a shot. Xenos nods and steps up to the door. He introduces himself as an assistant, and Charlotte's ready to dismiss him like the rest. But before she says anything, Xenos jumps in. He says he wants to talk about the surgery. He tells her it's totally fine if she doesn't want to go through with it. Anyone would be freaked out by the idea of someone cutting into their face. Besides, odd face disease doesn't even threaten your life. Worst case, she'll just be left with a huge old lady mole on her cheek. That's all he came to say. He turns to leave. But before he can walk off, Charlotte tells him to stop. That image of an old lady mole really got to her. She finally agrees to let them all come inside and asks if what Xenos said was true. Crescent tries to explain, but she cuts him off again and tells him to stay quiet. She still can't stand the sound of his voice. Goldrin speaks up and tells Charlotte that in past cases of odd face, after about a month, it starts turning into moles shaped like an old woman's face. That thought alone sends a chill down her spine, and she quickly asks if there's any way to get rid of it. Goldrin tells her the only option is surgery, but even then, she still refuses. She's too scared it might not work out the way they hope. Fennel steps in again and tells her that if they just let it sit, the mark's only going to spread. He says she should trust Goldrin to handle it. She looks at him and asks if he can guarantee she won't end up scarred. But Goldrin can't give her that promise since he's not the one performing the surgery himself. That's enough to send Charlotte running off. She says unless someone can give her a full guarantee it'll work without fail, she's not agreeing to anything. Later on, Xenos finds Charlotte sitting on the veranda outside her room, surrounded by a bunch of birds. She clearly loves them. But then Xenos notices one of them looks injured. Charlotte explains she found it earlier in the garden, and its injuries are bad enough that it'll probably never fly again. Kinda like her. With her face like this, she won't be showing up at parties or going out dancing anymore. Eventually, everyone's going to forget she was ever there. Xenos looks at her and asks if she really wants to get better. She snaps and says of course she does, but she doesn't want to deal with any scars either, so he needs to drop the subject. But while she's in the middle of shouting, Xenos quietly heals the bird's wing. A few seconds later, it's flapping around like it was never hurt at all. Charlotte is stunned that he fixed the bird that easily. Xenos tells her he can do the same for her. Doesn't matter if someone's a noble or a commoner if they're hurting. He's going to do whatever he can to help. That's what being a healer means to him. His words hit her hard, and for the first time, she believes him. Charlotte nods and agrees to go through with the surgery. Once Charlotte's under, Fennel steps out and tells Goldrin to take good care of her. But Goldrin's not planning to lift a finger. He already passed the whole thing off to Xenos and Crescent. Still, he plans on taking full credit. So he shoots Crescent a warning to not screw anything up. Xenos sees that Crescent's starting to panic, so he calmly offers to handle the whole operation himself. Crescent's relieved, but he turns to Xenos and asks if he's even done a procedure like this before. Technically, Xenos has, but that was way back when he was a kid. Even so, he's still got more hands-on experience than Crescent. Xenos is about to step in as lead surgeon, but Goldrin comes over and says the job has to be done by Crescent. That leaves Xenos stuck playing the assistant. Crescent grabs the scalpel with shaky hands and tries to get started, but he's trembling too much. He studied this operation before back at the hospital, so he begins following the textbook method. But Xenos stops him and runs a scan on Charlotte's body. Crescent has no idea what that was, so Xenos explains he just looked inside and mapped out where all the wart roots are. That way Crescent won't be cutting blind. The surgery moves along smoothly with Xenos guiding him. But when they reach the final root, Crescent freezes. The root has wrapped itself around her facial nerves. Cutting it would mean slicing through those nerves, and doing that would permanently alter her face. Nerve healing is complicated, so Crescent suggests they close her up and transfer her to the Royal Hospital, where they can do it right. But Goldrin isn't thinking about Charlotte, he's thinking about himself. He promised Fennel she'd be cured, and now the only way to follow through is to slice her nerve and mess up her face. A real doctor would have listened and done what's best for the patient, but Goldrin's the kind of guy who'd stab his own assistant in the back. He grabs Crescent's arm and forces him to make the final cut, slicing through the nerve with it. Then he starts shouting like it was all Crescent's fault. Crescent's too shocked to even speak. The second Fennel hears Goldrin shouting, he rushes into the room. Goldrin immediately yells that his idiot assistant Crescent just cut through Charlotte's facial nerves, says she's going to be disfigured for life. That kind of blame would wreck Crescent's future, and Goldrin clearly doesn't care. But Xenos does. He's not about to stand back and let that slide, especially not after Charlotte put her trust in him. Xenos steps up and tells Fennel that Goldrin is blowing things way out of proportion. A severed nerve isn't the end of the world. Then he says he's done standing around doing nothing. He shoves past Goldrin, grabs his scalpel, and cuts out the last root himself. Once it's out, he uses healing magic to fully restore Charlotte's damaged nerves without leaving a trace. A few hours later, Charlotte wakes up in her bed, and Fennel is relieved to see her open her eyes. But before she lets anyone get close, she reaches for a mirror, wants to see for herself. The moment she catches a glimpse of her reflection, she tears up. Those ugly growths are gone. Goldrin claimed full credit for the operation, so Fennel genuinely believes he's the one who saved his daughter. Goldrin said he had urgent business related to the hospital elections and had to leave right after the procedure. In return, Fennel promised to back him completely. Even so, Charlotte doesn't fully buy Goldrin's story. She vaguely remembers hearing Zenos' voice during the surgery, gently telling her that everything would be fine. Deep down, she knows he's the one who saved her, and she'll never forget that. Later on, Zenos is helping Human carry a load of bottles out of Bernardo's lab. She explains that the bottles are part of Bernardo's newest batch of potions, but she has no clue what any of them actually do. While they're in the storage room, Crescent bursts in with news. Both he and Zenos just got invitations to one of Goldrin's private dinner parties. Sounds like a big deal, but Human notices something off. Crescent says he's excited, but he doesn't look too thrilled. After what went down last time, he's not entirely sure he wants to deal with Goldrin again. Still, this could be his shot at a real promotion, so he decides to go for it. He tells Zenos the dinner's happening tonight and says he'll meet him down in the lobby. Goldrin's party soon kicks off. Everyone's seated as he proudly announces he's secured Lord Fennel's support, which means by the end of this month, he's basically guaranteed the director position at the Royal Hospital. Cheers fill the room. Even Crescent's earlier worries fade away as excitement takes over. It's a perfect opportunity to mingle with the influential people Goldrin invited tonight. While Crescent's out socializing, Zenos focuses on tracking down info about Afreed. Eventually finding out Afreed spent the previous dinner party looking after Bonds. Heading over to Bonds, Zenos asks if he remembers meeting a guy named Afreed at the last gathering, and Bonds recalls him clearly. Everyone else was busy mingling, yet Afreed took a moment to bring him a glass of water. Bonds thought he was strange, but still liked the kid, since Afreed was the only one giving him attention. Usually, Goldrin warns all his students Bonds is a liar, and to keep their distance. Zenos finds it odd Goldrin would say something like that when he's the one who appointed Bonds as first secretary. Lily wonders why Goldrin gave Bonds such a good role when he clearly doesn't do any actual work. Bonds claims it's simply because they're old friends, but when Lily tries to dig into how exactly he met Goldrin, Bonds gets annoyed, telling her to stop bothering him. He can't remember any details. Zenos figures there's no use pressing Bonds any further since he seems too drunk already, but Lily suspects Bonds is hiding one of Goldrin's secrets. She quickly grabs a waiter, asks him for a few bottles of wine, her plan being to get Bonds drunk enough to spill whatever dirt he's got on Goldrin. Over the next few hours, Lily showers Bonds with flattery, keeps him talking about himself while pouring drink after drink. Bonds ends up completely wasted, exactly as Lily planned. Her scheme is working perfectly, though Zenos feels slightly concerned about how easily an innocent girl like Lily came up with a tactic this sneaky. Lily proudly tells him she learned it from Carmilla, which only makes Zenos more annoyed at Carmilla for teaching Lily shady methods like this. But since it's useful right now, he brushes it off, turns to Bonds, asking directly if he has any idea what happened to Afreed after their encounter at the previous party. Bonds is barely awake now, but manages to say something about Afreed taking him outside for fresh air, so Zenos figures doing the same thing might trigger his memory, carrying Bonds outside for some air, hoping to recreate that night. But on the way out, Bonds drops his wine bottle, and instead of being upset, just starts laughing, talking about old times, thinking Zenos is Goldrin, remembering clearly the day that changed everything 13 years ago. Deciding to play along, Zenos pretends to be Goldrin, gets Bonds to keep talking, mentions Goldrin was just some researcher, hit a dead end in his work, until one day an explosion turned everything around. After that, thanks to Lord Fennel's support, Goldrin climbed his way up, became a professor at the Royal Hospital, and now even stands to become its next director. Bonds then passes out cold on the ground, leaving Zenos disappointed, feeling he was just about to uncover something major. But with Bonds unconscious, there's nothing left to do. Tells Lily they'll drop Bonds off with a caretaker, then take a breather. Lily asks if the info-gathering mission is wrapped up now, but Zenos still feels there's a crucial piece missing from the puzzle. Out of nowhere, Carmilla suddenly pops up from behind the couch, leaving Zenos shocked she's here, especially since the place is crawling with healers. But Carmilla just grins, says it's way more thrilling to cause trouble when there's danger involved. Besides overhearing most of Bond's ramblings, she's pretty sure she can shed some more light on the whole mess. Back in the slums, Zofia and the crew are getting restless, feeling down since Zenos has been gone for way too long. Usually they'd be at each other's throats, arguing over who belongs here, but without Zenos around, there's no reason to fight. Suddenly one of Zofia's guys rushes in panicked, shouting about a terrible accident. Zond and a few others were doing construction when a pillar fell, impaled Zond straight through the gut. The guy reporting to her is covered in Zond's blood, and Zofia can instantly tell how serious this is. With Zenos still missing, there's no way Zond will last long enough for him to return. Linga suggests bringing Zond straight to Zenos as soon as possible, but Zofia quickly reminds them that Zenos is undercover at the Royal Hospital. Going there directly could blow his entire operation. Linga and Lo insist, though certain Zenos would feel way worse if someone died just because he wasn't around. Back at the hospital, Carmilla fills Zenos and Lily in on a juicy rumor she overheard while wandering around campus. Apparently 13 years ago, a massive explosion rocked the place. Lord Fennel was right in the middle of it. Yet somehow he walked away without a scratch. Ever since that day, he's owed Goldrin big time. Usually when a powerful noble feels indebted to a healer after a major disaster, everyone assumes that healer saved their life. But from the scale of the explosion people described, Fennel should have been gravely injured, likely needing a complete body restoration. Zenos notes that a full restoration isn't actually that difficult, provided the person's heart is still beating, at least for someone skilled like him. But there's no way someone like Goldrin could have pulled off a procedure of that magnitude. So Lily suspects someone else stepped in. Her theory is simple. Another healer must have appeared after the explosion and patched Fennel up, saved his life completely, but before Fennel even woke up. That healer vanished without taking credit, giving Goldrin the perfect chance to step in and claim all the glory, then leverage Fennel's gratitude to climb through the hospital ranks. She also figures Bonds probably saw the whole thing, used that secret to blackmail Goldrin. And during the last party when Afreed was taking care of Bonds, Bonds likely let the truth slip, making Afreed panic and go into hiding, worried Goldrin would silence him permanently. Just then, Crescent comes rushing in, says he's been looking everywhere for Lily. Just met a few influential people he wants to introduce her to. Lily politely tells him politics aren't her thing. She'd much rather hang out with Zenos instead. But Crescent keeps pushing, so she decides to humor him for now and goes along. Once Lily leaves, Carmilla asks Zenos if he's considered another possibility regarding that explosion. Lily's theory makes sense, but given the way Carmilla described it, there's no chance Fennel was the only one caught in the blast. The explosion hit an entire crowd of people, yet somehow only one noble walked away completely unharmed, conveniently the same person Goldrin desperately needed a favor from. Taking into account Goldrin's known expertise with health transfer techniques, it seems clear he must have moved the remaining life force from all those injured people directly into Fennel. Basically, Goldrin sacrificed dozens of lives to save just one. Technically, under Kingdom law, something like that wouldn't be considered a serious crime. But Zenos personally finds the idea sickening. Given everything that's happened, it's likely Afreed uncovered the truth about what went down that day, which explains why he suddenly vanished. Carmilla asks what Zenos intends to do with this knowledge, and he shrugs, says he'll simply pass along what he's learned to Renardo and let it go. It's not his place to judge something of this magnitude. Zenos gets up, heads back towards the party, but when he arrives, everyone's attention is fixed on something happening outside. He nudges Crescent, asking what's up, and Crescent says there's some commotion at the front gate. Looking out, Zenos spots humans standing there, trying to enter, while guards block her, insisting no one without a direct invitation from Goldrin can come in. Human argues back, says it's an emergency, and she needs to see her friend immediately. Just then, Lo suddenly spots Zenos among the crowd and shouts his name loudly. Zofia immediately snaps at her for drawing attention when they were supposed to keep a low profile, apologizing quickly. Lo explains Zon's situation is critical and they don't have time for subtlety. When Goldrin hears what's happening, he's furious, demands to know why filthy demi-humans are standing outside his mansion, immediately orders the guards to kick them out. But before anyone can move, Lingen knocks the guard straight down. Lo walks through the gate with Zond slung over her shoulder, calls urgently to Zenos, says it's a real emergency. The second she mentions Zenos' name, whispers break out everywhere, the entire crowd turning to each other, questioning whether Zenos truly associates himself with demi-humans. Zenos ignores their whispers, asks Lo what's going on, and she quickly explains Zond got badly hurt during a construction accident. So they brought him to the Royal Hospital dorms looking for Zenos, ended up finding Human instead, and after telling her everything, she directed them here. Goldrin storms over, demanding to know Zenos' connection to these demi-humans, but Zenos completely ignores him, just tells Lo and the others he's coming right away. Goldrin warns Zenos he'll be throwing away any chance of being part of his elite inner circle if he helps them. But Zenos doesn't care about Goldrin's little clique at all. He's a healer, that means stepping in whenever someone's hurt. Turning briefly to Crescent to say goodbye, tells Lily it's time to go, scoops her up, jumps straight over the railing down to the ground floor, leaving Crescent stunned as Zenos runs off, wondering how anyone could toss away such a promising future like that. Goldrin then turns sharply towards Crescent, warns him he'd better not be thinking of pulling the same stunt, because from this moment on, Zenos' career as a healer is over as far as he's concerned. He'll make sure Zenos never practices healing at this hospital again. Crescent quietly agrees going against Goldrin was reckless, knowing how much power and prestige come with following Goldrin's path, but then again, remembers how Zenos never hesitated to heal anyone who needed it, be it a dog or a noble. Compared to someone like Goldrin, willing to betray anyone just to climb higher, he knows exactly who he'd rather be like. Making up his mind right then, jumps over the railing himself, rushes off to join Zenos and help him heal Zond. By the time Crescent catches up though, Zenos has already patched Zond up completely, leaving him awkwardly standing there realizing he probably didn't need to quit after all. Human laughs, calls him stupid for tossing his future aside over nothing, but admits she overheard what he said earlier. Those words were easily the most honorable thing he's ever spoken, making her proud to finally call him a friend, though he's still as annoying as ever. The next day Zenos heads to meet with Bernardo, fills him in on everything he found out about Goldrin's secret the previous night. Bernardo remembers Offred mentioning something about getting caught up in an accident as a kid, figures he must have been a survivor of that explosion. Given that Goldrin was probably behind it in the first place, Bernardo suspects Offred might be planning some major revenge plot, possibly at Goldrin's upcoming director election celebration party. Bernardo realizes he'll have to attend just in case, but setting that aside, he thanks Zenos sincerely for all the valuable intel, officially declaring that Zenos' job here is finished. Zenos double-checks if Bernardo's really fine with him leaving, but that was their deal from the start. He'll just need a little more time to get Zenos' departure papers ready. Once they're done, he'll finally reveal everything he knows about Zenos' master. Meanwhile, Human suggests they throw a farewell party for Zenos. That evening, everyone gathers in Zenos' room, Crescent miserably drowning himself in booze, lost about what he'll do once Zenos leaves. Human and Lily tell him how pathetic he's acting, but it doesn't lift his mood, so Zenos tries to cheer him up, reminds him he's adaptable enough to land on his feet wherever he goes. Crescent appreciates Zenos not being mean about it, but it still doesn't help at all. Now he's even worried he's starting to hallucinate, swears there's a wraith glaring at him from behind the wall. The following morning, Zenos is finally ready to leave. He and Lily say their goodbyes, but right before they go, Human mentions Bernardo wrote a letter containing everything he knows about Zenos and Master. However, when they reach Bernardo's office to grab the letter, they stumble upon something strange inside his desk. While across town, at the same moment Bernardo has just wiped out everyone attending Goldrin's celebration party. A couple minutes ago, Goldrin was savoring the glory, picturing himself sitting proudly as the hospital director, when Lord Fennel approached, congratulating him, telling Goldrin it's about time he got the position he truly deserved. Goldrin thanks him politely, but his mind drifts back to the incident 13 years ago, the event that changed his entire life. There'd been an explosion at a magic tool factory. Goldrin was returning home after years of research that went nowhere when he spotted an injured noble lying helplessly on the ground. Decided right then to heal the man, hoping the act of kindness would somehow pay off later, but never imagined the noble he'd saved was one of the kingdom's 7 great aristocrats. Incredibly, it was also the very first time his health transfer magic actually worked, even though it meant draining the life force from the other injured victims nearby. Unfortunately for Goldrin, Bonds managed to snap a picture of that exact moment, forcing Goldrin to silence him by offering Bonds the job as his first secretary. As the memory fades, Goldrin notices Bernardo coming toward him, wine bottle in hand, clearly intending to congratulate him. Goldrin smirks mocks Bernardo openly, asking if he's already here to kiss up to the next director, but Bernardo just brushes it off without a care. Goldrin then shifts the topic to Zenos, mentioning he once thought the boy showed promise, but ultimately let him down, talks bitterly about inviting Zenos to a dinner party, only for the kid to run off and treat some demi-humans instead. Goldrin declares no one in his faction can prioritize healing peasants, because such actions hurt their political and social standing. In his eyes, not all lives hold equal value. Right after, Fennel stands up to give a toast in Goldrin's honor, starts to recite the story of how Goldrin saved him 13 years ago. But Goldrin interrupts, insists there's no need to recount old stories. Fennel smiles, says Goldrin is humble for not wanting to boast about past achievements, then invites him onto the stage. Standing there, Goldrin thinks this moment marks the peak of his life, raises his glass proudly toasting his brilliant future. At that exact moment, Zenos and Human uncover a photograph in Bernardo's office, clearly showing Goldrin stealing the life force from other victims to save Fennel. Human spots the young Offred in the picture, instantly realizes Offred's definitely seeking revenge, but then her eyes fall on a woman's face in the photo, leaving her completely stunned. Over at the party, Goldrin suddenly snaps awake after being knocked unconscious, blood trickling from his mouth. Wonders what's going on when Bernardo walks over calmly, staggering to his feet, sees all his guests collapsed around him. Bernardo casually tells him the wine everyone's been drinking was poisoned with a special home-brewed toxin. Explains they've got maybe an hour tops unless they get treated immediately, but Goldrin has about 2 hours since he drank less. Goldrin freaks out, demands to know what Bernardo's playing at, and Bernardo replies he's simply recreating that accident scene from 13 years ago. Goldrin freaks out, unsure how Bernardo found out about it, and Bernardo reveals Zenos gave him the lead, says he had a chat with Bonds about it, and though Bonds didn't want to talk at first, a bit of medicine and booze loosened his tongue. Bernardo mentions being lucky enough to find a photograph too. Goldrin goes even paler than before, thinking he destroyed every copy of that photo. Bernardo reminds Goldrin about how 13 years ago, he decided to save Fennel by sacrificing the lives of everyone he saw as worthless. Goldrin tries to justify it, says everyone would have died anyway, but Bernardo tells him Offred was one of those injured people, yet he survived. Then suddenly Bernardo reveals his own fiancée was there too. but she died because Goldrin drained her life force. Now Ernardo demands Goldrin make the same decision again, because there's enough people here for him to fully cure just one person from the poison. Ernardo presses him, wanting to see who he'll choose, but Goldrin believes he can just take the antidote from Ernardo directly. Shockingly, Ernardo grabs a glass, drinks the poisoned wine himself, giving Goldrin another option. If he trusts Ernardo has an antidote, he could save him first. Turns out Goldrin doesn't trust Ernardo at all, quickly decides to save himself first, then plans to cure Fennel since that's the most beneficial move politically. Immediately begins absorbing the life force of his faction members to heal himself. But Ernardo warns him he already has way more life force than any of them. If Goldrin sacrifices himself, he'll easily save multiple people. Goldrin snaps back that his own life is far more valuable, angering Ernardo deeply. But then suddenly, the poison starts kicking in hard. At that moment, Xenos, Human, and Crescent rush into the hall, shocked by the horrifying state of the place. Ernardo asks them sharply what they're doing here, and Human quickly explains she found the picture in his desk, saw his fiancée in it, rushed straight over worried he'd do something drastic. Xenos instantly notices everyone's been poisoned, while Ernardo starts recounting his tragic story. 13 years ago, he and his fiancée were just rookie healers, filled with hope, ambition, dreams of the future. But when she supposedly died from an explosion, it crushed him completely. Tried moving forward by dedicating himself fully to work. But when Afreed discovered at Goldrin's party that she hadn't actually died from the blast, Ernardo became consumed with anger. Afreed disappeared shortly after revealing the truth, leaving Ernardo without proof, without means to seek justice. That's why he hired Xenos, hoping he'd find Afreed or uncover something solid about Goldrin's past. Human tells Ernardo he's being unfair, but before Ernardo can reply, Crescent explodes in anger, yelling he'd also lose it if something ever happened to his girlfriend, even though he doesn't actually have one, but hurting innocent people is dead wrong. He shouts at Ernardo, furious that a healer could ever think of causing harm. Xenos pats Crescent's shoulder gently, tells him he'll handle it from here. Reminds Ernardo about the time he asked which coins he'd pick up if gold, silver, and bronze coins fell from his pocket. Says he finally has the answer now. Says he'd pick up every single coin because growing up poor, he values everything. And just like that, he plans to save everyone who's injured. Ernardo panics, warns Xenos he won't benefit at all from this, and Xenos admits he's right. But knows clearly that once everything settles, Ernardo will be branded a hated mass murderer, and Human will suffer greatly because of it. Human gets emotional, asks if he's really doing this for her, and Xenos softly confirms, calling it payback for the farewell party because it was the first time someone was genuinely sad about him leaving. Ernardo desperately insists even with good intentions. Xenos can't possibly heal a poison he knows nothing about, and Xenos agrees there's no time to figure out what's in the poison. Instead, he calmly starts healing everyone one by one. Ernardo yells that basic healing will only delay the poison's effects, won't detoxify anyone completely. Suddenly, Ernardo himself falls under Xenos' healing range, and immediately realizes exactly what Xenos is trying to pull off. Xenos calmly explains all poisons eventually leave the body on their own, if they don't kill first. He's just pushing everyone's bodies to hold out until they naturally expel it. It's basically a battle of stamina between his healing magic and the poison. Human and Crescent immediately volunteer to help out. Xenos instructs them to concentrate on whoever seems weakest. Ernardo stands there stunned, insisting the basic heal spell shouldn't even last this long. But Xenos casually says he never had formal training, so nobody ever told him that. Ernardo quietly starts talking about his fiancée, how she chose to become a healer just to save lives. She was the most amazing person he'd ever known, a complete contrast to someone like Goldrin. Ernardo confesses he couldn't stomach the thought of a selfish bastard like Goldrin becoming director. He had to take action somehow. Starts deeply regretting poisoning everyone, thanks Xenos sincerely for saving him from becoming a monster. Xenos shrugs, jokes Ernardo can thank him later with a nice bonus, since healing this many people isn't exactly a walk in the park. Soon enough, the guests start waking up one by one as the poison finally leaves their bodies. But Goldrin still isn't cured, barks an order for Xenos to treat him immediately. Xenos coolly replies he doesn't take orders from anyone. Goldrin's furious but helpless. He demands the healers from his own faction step in, but they vaguely remember Goldrin tried stealing their life force while they were unconscious, flat out refuse to help him. Xenos smirks, tells Goldrin he'll gladly help for a decent fee, writes down a number with more zeros than Goldrin's ever seen in his miserable life. Goldrin protests loudly, says no way he's paying that much just for a basic healing. Xenos shrugs, says it's goodbye then. Goldrin panics and instantly accepts the deal. But just before Xenos can heal this piece of garbage, Fennel steps forward, calmly tells Goldrin they'll be having a serious talk about all this later. Suddenly, Goldrin realizes he's about to lose absolutely everything. Not long after, Ernardo gets locked up. Xenos and Human drop by for a visit. Ernardo acts cheerful, his usual carefree self, surprised they got permission so fast. Xenos casually says he has some contacts in the Royal Guard. Just then, Krishna shows up, assumes Xenos is using Ernardo as an excuse to meet with her. Xenos lets her enjoy living in her own delusional world. then turns back to Bernardo, tells him he needs some answers. Yuman asks Bernardo if he truly poisoned all those guests, and Bernardo replies he honestly didn't, not exactly. He just mixed up something to knock everyone out and temporarily paralyze them, aiming to recreate the scene from 13 years ago, force Goldrin to confess his crimes. But when Bernardo himself started coughing up blood, he knew something went seriously wrong. Confident he'd made no mistake with his own chemicals, quickly figured someone else slipped actual poison into the wine alongside him. Believes Afreed's responsible, hiding among the collapsed guests, watching how things played out. Yuman feels relieved since it means Bernardo isn't really guilty, but Bernardo disagrees. Says even after realizing people were poisoned, he was still ready to let them die just to fulfill his revenge. Krishna tells him with the evidence they have now, and given his friendship with Xenos, she can pull some strings to get him released soon. Yuman immediately begs her to help. They prepare to leave, but Bernardo stops Xenos, warns him to be careful. He thinks it's unlikely Afreed stayed human after losing his life force to Goldrin. Suspects Afreed's intentions run far deeper and darker than simple revenge. And since Xenos interfered, Afreed might turn his attention to him next. Xenos shrugs, says he couldn't care less, and if Afreed does try something, he'll slap him with an enormous bill for all the trouble he's caused. With everything wrapped up, Xenos finally heads back home, reluctantly resumes life with his unwanted harem, goes right back to working as the underground healer who'll treat absolutely anyone, or anything, if the price is right. Elsewhere in the kingdom, it's revealed the guide was behind this entire mess, currently possessing Afreed's body, extremely pissed that his grand scheme totally failed. Thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, it makes all the difference.